Hey, Carl's back and Paul. How are you, buddy?
All right, Brad. How's it going, mate?
I'm good, man. It's been a few years. 2012, back in Chicago Comic-Con last we met.
Wow.
A lot of water under the bridge, huh?
Yeah, I guess so, man. I didn't realize that. You have to excuse me. I'm making my tea, you know.
You're making tea.
In advance of my interviews, I always have to have a cup of tea, you know.
Well, you're from the UK, but you're in Georgia, so but you still bring your tea.
That's right.
We already have people tuning in. We have Stoggy says, "Hey guys."
Stogie, that's our guy. Stogie.
Stogie. Right. Oh, there you go. Nice. Yeah. And we
right.
have SoFlo, Crawlspace Brad, and Jenkins. Hello. What's going on?
All right.
So we're going to talk a bit about your Spider-Man run. We're also going to talk about a Kickstarter that you are currently in the process of doing. Let me pull this up. And it's called Fairy Quest. And when we met in Chicago, you had just released your first volume back in 2012. So you're up to volume 3 on Kickstarter, and you've got 596 backers at the moment. Your goal of 40 grand, you're almost there. Let me play this little video from the front end, and I'll lower the volume. Talk a little bit about Fairy Quest. What is Fairy Quest?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's quite self-explanatory, actually. If you want to turn the volume up a little bit, it'd probably help you to see it.
Okay.
I am the big
so it's
bad wolf, and I am very, very hungry.
Hiya, Mr. Wolf.
So the big bad wolf says, I am the big bad wolf, and I am very, very hungry.
That is a well-trained cat.
Oh, hello. Gordon's and I are reading his favorite book. This is Fairy Quest, and we are about to reprint Fairy Quest 1 and Fairy Quest 2 here on Kickstarter, where it all began. And we're also coming out with Fairy Quest 3, a brand new book. So we would love you guys to be part of our campaign. So we have planned a ton of extras and add-ons, lots of amazing swag that will add to every pledge as we're closing on our funding goals. We can't wait to bring you all kinds of exclusives and incentives that we'll announce if we're lucky enough to hit our stretch goals. And we have some special cover artists lined up. We have Ali Garza, we have Billy Tucci of Sergeant Rock fame, and we have Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Fairy Quest 3 is the next chapter in the Fairy Quest saga, which is set in Fablewood, a giant forest where all of the stories live together, but they're divided by genre borders. We originally published the work here in the early days of Kickstarter, and after a long hiatus, I'm really thrilled that we're going to be bringing our book back here again. I know you're going to love the new 48-page chapter with a new main cover by Humberto Ramos. And this time we're welcoming the incredible Mike Bowden, as well as our fantabulous friend Leo Olia, who's going to be doing all of the colors and all of the design and lettering on the book. Since our first Kickstarter, Fairy Quest has been translated into a number of languages. It's been a cool statue. We've seen live action. We've had a bunch of cosplay people come up as our characters. And we've even developed a live action version of it that we performed at Pinewood Studios in Atlanta. All of this comes down to the fans at Kickstarter. We can't do any of this without your help. Fairy Quest exists because of you, and now we're finally able to bring our beautiful book back into print. I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to finish it here where it all began. So thanks for watching our video, and thanks so much for helping us.
I tell you what, it looks amazing, and it's basically
watch my wife.
Oh, you got a blooper.
Okay, take 10.
Take 10.
You're not having.
That's my wife.
Nice. 83% there, man. 83% there. That's awesome. So Fairy Quest is basically the fairy tales going off script a little bit with Red, etc. And they're not sticking to their script, essentially, right?
Yeah, so basically the way that we did it is if you, the world is a world called Fablewood, right? And they all live in this giant forest called Fablewood. And it's a forest, it's the world where like all of the stories that I've ever been told are in there, and they're all divided by borders, which are like genre borders, right? So you got science fiction and fantasy and horror and romance and historical fiction.
Right.
Right in the middle, you got the children's stories, and they are made to tell their story. And if they don't tell them properly, then they get their minds wiped in the dreaded mind eraser.
Yes.
So like a lot of children's stories, it's kind of got, it's macabre, you know. It's like Hansel and Gretel is about an old lady that eats children, you know. It's kind of dark, and and so in the story, Red Riding Hood and the wolf become best friends, and they decide to try to escape together, so they can be together forever.
And you've got some cover art. Humberto did the first 3 covers, and you have a new interior artist this time.
Yep. Yeah, we've got Mike Bowden, who's incredible, and it actually fits with the way that the story is. So they try to escape. They go along the yellow brick road to freedom. That's Ali Garza, actually, that cover that you just showed.
Oh, this one?
Right, that one is Ali Garza. I think if you can go into updates, you'll actually see a couple of really cool things.
Oh, the one you put up today is beautiful. Let me show that one.
Yeah, Jennifer is like
look at that one. Wow. Yeah.
She's like my favorite person on the internet. And if anybody here has never seen Jennifer Meyer,
there's her.
Jennifer is it? I think JenniferMeyer.com. I think she's at JL Meyer or at Jennifer Meyer.
Yeah.
And if you want to put yourself in a good mood, go to her Twitter stream like every day or her Instagram, whatever, and watch her stuff, because it's like a bunch of like happy pictures of bunnies and she's the best. And what is so great about Jennifer is that in real life, like in actual fact, she's exactly who she is online. She's as kind and as sweet a person that I've ever met. She's absolutely brilliant.
What is it like as a writer when you get that in your inbox? I mean, I can't imagine. Your words are coming to life with this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's there's a trade, right, Brad? So
the
trade is that you get this incredible stuff that you see and you go like, wow, this is amazing. Look at what I got, right? If you go to the previous update, I think, if you go to the one from, I think, like 2 days ago.
This one? Oh, no.
I need to just go back to updates.
This one.
Yeah. So now we got some mock-ups of the covers, right? You can kind of see what it looks like. But if you go down a little bit, there's Ali Garza's cover. And then this one here is Mike Bowden's art. So people understand. Beautiful. I mean, we are not going sideways. Like, his stuff is so great.
No doubt.
And if you go down, you can kind of see like a new page. You see a little bit of the dialogue that we threw in. We don't want to give away too much of the story yet.
Right.
But Mike is a perfect artist right now, because he actually transitions from Umberto, and in the story they actually become self-aware, and they go through the looking glass.
Nice.
And once they go through the looking glass, they begin to transform, and they start becoming real. And then they find the genre borders, and they start going through all these worlds like horror and science fiction. They start going through these worlds to try and escape. And the closer they get to the real world, the more they become real.
So of course the artwork would change with that.
That's right. So
they look different. Yeah. And this, you said they're going to Oz, so that is
no. This is they're right now. They're on the Yellow Brick Road, and they just got caught by Dorothy. And Dorothy and the Tin Man and the lion are all like really scary.
Yeah, that Dorothy looks like she's a little from Texas. She doesn't look like Judy Garland.
She's trailer trash. She's sexy Dorothy. You know.
No, there you go.
And then they go, and that image that you got right there, they go into Wonderland, right? The one below. If you could just scroll down.
Wonderland with Alice.
Yeah,
I guess that's Alice over there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's Alice. There's the Hatter, but there's the
Cheshire Cat.
Cheshire Cat.
Yeah.
And so they go through the looking glass, and at that point, everything's upside down, and it begins to change. And they find that Wonderland is in anarchy, because no one's telling their story properly anymore.
What's some other you've got on your updates is where you put most of the new art that comes in, etc., that people will see.
Yeah, we do put art. I mean, on our main page we've got some art, but we love to go through and
campaign. I think there's some.
Yeah, in the campaign, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you actually just kind of go down and you see that we put art. Yeah. Here's like images from the story.
Right. Beautiful.
So we I mean, basically, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
Amazing.
I love the size of the book too. Yep. I mean, it's a bigger size than a regular trade paperback or a hardcover trade.
Yeah,
and it's also and this is your son and your wife, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so my little boy, when we started this, my son Jack was a little dude, and now he's 14 years old, and he's got hair in his armpits.
Did he lose interest in Spider-Man? The Spider-Man's not on the shirt anymore, you know?
Yeah, I don't know why Spider-Man's. I kind of had forgotten that. I think it's probably just different pair of pajamas, right? So,
oh yeah, there you go. And I guess your wife is tired of reading the same story to the kid over and over.
So what happens is, well, actually, what happens is, as they get further away from their story, the mother begins to forget the story, like because they're not telling the story is now not memorable anymore, and so she's beginning to get frustrated, and she's telling it wrong, and the kid's like, "Why are you telling the story wrong?" Because the story isn't there anymore.
Right. Because I haven't read 2. I just signed up for that group where you get to buy both of them, 2 and 3.
Oh, good. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for backing us. And
no problem. Oh, there's Sexy Dorothy again.
There's Sexy Dorothy. You know what's crazy about it is with that particular book, and we'll tie this into Spider-Man in a minute, because you and I have known one thing that I think is really interesting. There are a couple of issues of Spider-Man that I've done, and I've done lots of them, but there are a couple that repeat with me. People come up with the same issues, and they're always emotionally very moved, and you probably can guess which ones they are. The baseball game, the African-American Spider-Man, and Uncle Ben's grave, I bet. Uncle Ben's grave, yeah, that's exactly it. And so they will come up and they'll talk to me about that. They come back. Well, they always come back about this project too. Like people will buy issue 1, come around in a circle the next day and say, I need the next one. Awesome. And it doesn't matter if it's a little girl who's 5 years old or a dude in his 60s. Everybody comes back the same way and says, I want it. So what you're looking at right there, which I think is kind of cool, is the embossing. The embossing and the way that we did the UV coating. There's a little video that plays actually that shows you the way that we want to put them together. Oh, here we go. I like to own books that I can keep. You know? Oh yeah, no doubt. Okay, so let's take a look at the production values that we've got. What if I full screen it? What will that do? Oh, there you go. Or perfect bound side of the book. We like to make something that lasts for a very long time. If you look at the back cover, and we've done it on both covers, you'll see, as I've held it up to the light here, it says "Do not deviate," but that's actually just using a spot UV varnish. So that's something that we brought to the front cover of all of our books. Let's take a look at the front cover. As I hold it up to the light, you'll see we've got the spot UV coating again, so it's in the eyeballs. But you can also see that Red Riding Hood is actually embossed on the cover, and some of the other characters are as well. This is the kind of book that we make to be very sturdy and beautiful, so that it will last a really long time, and we hope that you will love it as much as we do. Very cool. Who's ever doing your video production is doing good. Is it you? Me. Is it you? What about the editing and the making the characters from the book move? What is that? You too? So that was our digital media guy, Mario Andre. So we have a great group of people at my company. Is just Meta Studios. By the way, you know what I'm always really pleased with is the fact that our animated logo, which is on the main video that you have, right? Our animated logo at the top. When you play it back, it's like if you go to the very top. Oh, at the front end? I feel like bragging on it. Go to the very top of the page. Okay. Yeah, and if you go to the end of the video, so we worked pretty hard on. You can kind of go backwards in the video a little bit. On this? No, to the very end of it. Yeah, go to the end of it. End of this. Okay. Yeah, around about just before that bit, you'll see our logo play out, and there you go. There you go. If you see it unfold, it's actually quite nice because it's Meta. There's a thing behind my company. There you go. Nice. Yeah, whoever designed that did a really good job. I love the color that flies across it too. Yeah, it's cool, right? It looks very slick. That was a friend of ours, Dana Wagner, and myself. Nice. But one of the things about Meta, my company, is that it's media education, technology, and advancement. So we do all about like moving media forward, but also making sure that we advance our creative community, that we work with new technologies. So we got a bunch of stuff that comes out of this brain and gets made. Now your friend Stoggy has an announcement. If we get let me show you how many backers do we have. Let me go back. There you go. Stoggy is going to give away. Here we go. We got 596 backers at the moment. There you go. If we get to 600, he's going to give away a copy of Spectacular Spider-Man number 27, which is a classic issue that you wrote. It's your last one. It is my last one. You're going to give it to a giveaway. So if we can get 4 people during this stream, you get something. Look at that. Thank you, Stoggy and Paul. That's really cool. That's really cool. Good, right? No, we're excited, because we're so close to our first goal. If we get to 40, we got 2 weeks to go. The last week is always a bit big anyway, but I think, what we want to do is those stretch goals kind of thing. That stuff is fun, right? Yeah, let's pull down the stretch goals down here. Yeah. Let's see.
There you go.
So where we are at is we get to 40, but once we get to the stretch goal, we'll probably throw in one at 45. To be quite honest, we've already thrown in 2 or 3 of them. You know, we've given away stuff like I can't remember what did we give, bookmarks, and we've got some cards and stuff like that we're just going to give to everybody anyway, because we're just grateful that we get to make our book. Right. So Jennifer Meyer, you know, the image that you saw earlier on, we're going to make that into a print and release that.
That's beautiful.
At 40. Everybody really seems to want that book, but we're also going to be making some cards, and Stogie and I are working on a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah, I should mention, by the way, you just kind of went past Jill.
Yeah, there we go.
I forgot to mention Jill, of course. So Jill is amazing. Jill Thompson. She's doing the cover for us as well. She's brilliant. She's a good friend, and she's a really, really, really talented artist. So Jill Thompson, Ali Garza, Kevin Eastman, Mike Bowden, and Billy Tucci.
No doubt.
And what makes it? Well, we got the always the main covers by Umberto, who I in the book with, and Leo, who you see below, is the secret weapon, because all of that beautiful coloring that you see, that's Leo.
No doubt. He's got a David Bowie look going on.
You never know with Leo; he's got something going on.
One thing I like that over here on your pledges, you can get whatever variant you want. You can get an Eastman cover. You can get any of them that you want. So again, if we get up here, let me scroll all the way to the top. If we get to 500, oh nope, I'm on the updates. Let me go back. If we get to 600, you're giving away an autographed Spider-Man. Look at that.
Yeah,
let me hit refresh.
Go tell your friends is the trick, right?
Yeah, go tell your friends. Share this live stream, because we're going to be talking about Spider-Man. So again, Fairy Quest. If you want to support it, in the description on Facebook and YouTube, I put a link to the Kickstarter. Just click on that in the video that you're watching right now. All right, you ready to talk Spider-Man?
Yeah, let's talk Spider-Man, man.
All right, let me remove this. And so you originally started, because I'm going to try to avoid what we've already talked about. I'm going to talk about some stuff that we didn't talk about back in 2012 at the Chicago Comic-Con. Okay. Your very first issue was in Web Spinners.
That's right.
And you tackled the Chameleon.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things in that issue is how you had him talk about how he's his first. That was Spider-Man's very first villain. Right. Here is the issue. Talk about what went into writing this one. Did you always... I mean, where better to start than with Chameleon for your first Spider-Man story?
He was the first guy, wasn't he? He was the first villain. And so there's always a story behind almost everything that I write, Brad. And I think you may have seen this, but on our YouTube channel on Meta, which, you know, we've been doing some cool stuff, but, you know, we don't do it as often right now, but we're about to once we finish with our Kickstarter. And I began to do the story behind the story and actually tell everybody, like, you know, what is behind each of these issues, right? Now, we haven't gotten to that one, but let me tell you the story behind the story, and I'll get to it, you know. So what happened was, when I came to Marvel, I was not an insider, right? I'm not an insider in comics. And I think you and I have talked a little bit about that before.
Right.
I found that to be my advantage, right? Sorry, but I didn't read millions of comics before I wrote Spider-Man. Right. I'm not a massive, long-time comic book reader, but I'm familiar enough with them, right? I love the form of art. It's not like I don't know who Spider-Man is. I have a pretty strong idea of who he is. I wrote him for 6 years, right?
Right.
But I came to Marvel and we did a set of characters called the Inhumans, right?
Right.
They couldn't give them away. They had never been able to sell them. They had tried them a few times. And so they were the biggest set of throwaway characters. And we came in Marvel Nights when Chapter 11 bankruptcy was at Marvel.
Right.
And they let me write the Inhumans, and it won an Eisner Award. And they didn't know what to do with me at that point. Because
congratulations, here's Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, that's what they did, right? So how frustrating to you and maybe the fans of your show that I turned them down and said, no, thanks. I don't know what to do with Spider-Man. And it kind of threw them for a loop a little bit, because I think they would have assumed at Marvel that anybody would want to write Spider-Man. Anybody would want to write, you know, Thor and Captain America.
Right.
And so it probably made them feel a bit weird that this punk from Britain tells them no thanks. But it wasn't because I didn't love the characters. it was because I genuinely told Ralph Macchio, the editor, I don't know what to do with Spider-Man. It's very confusing to me. And so I had this kind of big lecture with Ralph, who's a wonderful guy, but I'm a writer that happens to work in comics, and that's been my advantage, right, Brad? I'm lucky because I don't live and die with each of the, you know, if I could write Batman, I could write the Riddler, I could write the Big Wheel, you know, I don't care, right?
Mindworm. I mean, we're going to talk about Mindworm in a little bit. You made me care about Mindworm, dude.
Mindworm. And so I felt that I could make you care about any character. I don't care what character it was. And that included Spider-Man. And so I talked to Ralph the very first time he asked me, and I said, Ralph, I'll be honest with you. I don't understand Spider-Man at all. I know there's been a clone saga, but I don't really feel like I understand it.
Welcome to the club.
Well, and at the time, the way that I saw it was this. I think they had overdone it. I think that, you know, it was okay to see the death of his Uncle Ben, and that was a driving factor behind who he was. Mm-hmm. And after that, Gwen dies. And to me, that was the death of the love of his life. And with all due respect to Mary Jane, that was like, it doesn't mean that he doesn't love Mary Jane just because he once loved Gwen. He still loved her, right? And he loved Gwen, and everything about him was his love for her. But then he loses Captain Stacy, and that's Gwen's dad, and she's died. And okay, but then someone else is dead. And at the time that I came on, they said, oh, Mary Jane's dead. She's dead in a plane crash. And I'm like, make it stop. Right, what's the point? And even when I very first took over, they said, Mary Jane's dead, but she's coming back. And I said, yeah, well, what was your first clue? Like, you don't, you know, you never saw the body, so she's coming back, right?
Yeah, it's comics. Even if you do see the body, who cares?
Yeah, who cares, right? Yeah. And so what happened was I said, I don't get it. It's so convoluted. I can't even make head or tail of what it. If you let me write it simply, then I can do it. If you don't let me just write simple stuff that really speaks to the core of the character, I don't think I'm your guy. If you want. But what happened was about 2 years into working at Marvel, I'd done Inhumans. I was working on Sentry. Yeah. And Ralph tried me one more time. And I said, Ralph, you know, I hang on a minute. I realize what I need to write about. I need to write about him stripping away all of this continuity and all of this complexity. Mm-hmm. I need to write a way in which I can liberate him and get to the core of who he is. That's what I would like to say. If you're okay with that, then let's do that. And I did it in Web Spinners. And it was a story about the chameleon. But essentially, it was a story. It was a 3-part story where I did 2 of them with Sean and 1 of them with J.G. Jones, right?
Right. Yeah.
And in the first 2, he undergoes a difficult situation with the chameleon where the chameleon has come to a point where he realizes his life can't be interesting because he can't be who he really is. He doesn't even know who he is because he's just other people. And he realizes the most incredible person that he knows is Spider-Man, is Peter Parker.
Right.
And so he wants to be him. And they end up on the bridge where Gwen died.
Right.
And you realize it's just the 2 of them. And he says, look, Peter, he tries to say, I want to be you. Mm-hmm. You're so even your failures are tremendous, you know. And he ends up saying, I love you. And it's not a homosexual thing. It never was. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. That's not that.
Right.
He just meant, I love you. You know, I want to be you. Right. And they start laughing and they realize,
yeah, and
man, you know,
it's been years since he saw Spider-Man laugh like that. That was a belly laugh.
Right. And he says, that's right. And so the chameleon, is saying the things that I think the readers felt, which is, it's been too long since I saw you laugh, and I'm happy that you're laughing, Peter, and I'm glad I brought this to you. And then because he knows he can't be anybody, he throws himself off the bridge. Right. And it's tragic and it's awful, but he has no identity of his own, and he realizes he never will.
Mm-hmm. One of the, I've got the panel up that I was talking about. By the way, I love Spider-Man's huge 1990s phone on his waist. Check that out. So this is the,
no matter
was it a Nokia?
It never breaks.
So this is the part I love. He's on the phone. I was your very first. Oh, nope, you can't see it. I got it. Oh, here, let me. Oh, I got to do this one. Okay, so he's down here, and he goes, "I was your very first." I just love that scene. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Had you always been a Chameleon fan, or why start with Chameleon?
I wanted to go back to the beginning, man. My whole run was about going back to what made Spider-Man interesting. Yeah. And, you know, I will kind of rehash, I think, something that you and I probably talked about the last time that we talked, which is when I was brought onto the project finally, they said to me, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, listen, here's the thing that drives me crazy. The first thing I heard was, well, there are no good Spider-Man stories to be told anymore. And I said, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
I've never told any Spider-Man stories, so let me have a go first before you tell me that Spider-Man is finished. And I have always felt that when we got put on Peter Parker Spider-Man, which is about 9 months before Joe Straczynski got put on his run, that we were the quiet revolution.
Mm-hmm.
We were the ones who rebuilt Spider-Man. And the way that we did rebuild Spider-Man was a very simple way, which was we told very simple stories. And the first conversation I had with Bucky was, why can't he laugh, man?
Exactly.
And why does he laugh? Like what makes him the essence of Spider-Man? And both of us agreed that his ability to do a wisecrack was the reason why he wins.
And that's probably why one of the reasons you tried his hand at stand-up comedy. He found out he's really not funny, but
he's terrible at it.
He's terrible.
He was terrible at it. But I love the fact that he gives it a shot in memory of Mary Jane, because he thinks Mary Jane's dead at the point. And so he says, well, you know, there's this thing I've always wanted to do, and you think it's going to be like the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it disappears because you realize he's terrible at it. You know.
And in your very first or your second story, you have him laugh again. He got hit in the head with the dirt or mud at Uncle Ben's grave.
So the whole issue, that whole issue was about how, if you look at the essence of who he is as a human being, he's going to be shaped by some of the things, and then there's part of it that he's going to be, right? You know, I'm a parent, right? I have little kids, and I know that at times my children will be who they are, whether I try to teach them something or not. And at other times, they will do the things that I taught them. Yeah. Yeah. And so we get to see some of the things that shaped him. And one of them was that he had his Uncle Ben, and his Uncle Ben was a jokester, and they played practical jokes on each other. And as you know, most of what I wrote in Spider-Man was literally about myself and my soon-to-be wife at the time.
Mm-hmm.
She has the funniest little sense of humor, and so she and I would play practical jokes on each other, you know, throw water on each other and like leave like soap on the thing and stuff like that. And the idea that this kid had grown up with Uncle Ben, and he was an orphan, and he was really scared and didn't know what to do, and his aunt and uncle were much older.
Yeah.
And then he comes to the house for the very first time, like the bit that you're showing there.
Yeah.
And he meets Uncle Ben, and he's like, oh, no, hey, I don't know who this guy is. And then he turns around, and he's got an orange peel in his mouth.
and like we talked about earlier, you gave some humanity to Uncle Ben. Otherwise, he was just a dude that died.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't show why this character loved this other character so much, why do we care about Uncle Ben?
Uncle Ben was my granddad Jenkins. My granddad Jenkins used to do that thing with the orange, and he had
he did. Oh, that's cool.
He had a twinkle in his eye. He was a funny guy, and he had this real twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
And he had a ton of pain in his life. He had to throw himself off a train. He designed most of the railways in Kenya, and he had to throw himself off a train one time, and it smashed his leg up on a bunch of rocks.
Wow.
So he was in a lot of pain, but he was a pleasant dude.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing pain and humanity in a person, and look at what we brought. I mean, that's why I said every single issue that I've ever written of any comic is based on something that I know.
That's awesome. So you started with, what was it, writing that first official comic as the new writer on Spider-Man? Was that harder than writing the web spinner one? I mean, you want to start strong, and you did with that first issue.
No, I've never found it hard. I hate to spoil people's illusions or be frustrating.
Yeah, that one right there.
But it's comics, man. It's not hard.
It's
The reason why it wasn't hard is because Marvel were in Chapter 11 bankruptcy and they had no choice. The last resort of the creative corporation is to go to the creators and empower them. But they were so close to going out of business. I can't even tell you how close they were. They were this close to be Chapter 7. And they were going to sell themselves for $1 million, right?
Yeah.
They
Can you imagine?
away. And as a last resort, they came to us at Marvel Nights and they said, do a few books. And we did them, and they won Eisner Awards, and they did sales, and they realized, hang on a minute. We're letting these good creators do good stuff. Why don't we let the good creators do Hulk and Spider-Man? And so they let me have a go at Spider-Man.
Right.
Eventually. I mean, I did Hulk as well, you know, and they kind of I became the guy that rebuilt their franchises because they had problems with Hulk as well.
Your Hulk run didn't last that long. Did you?
I didn't want to do it. I'm not that angry of a person. I didn't have that much to say. I wanted to write about anger, but unfortunately, and my wife will attest to this.
You're not a mean dude.
I'm not much in anger. I'm not much about it, you know.
Right.
And so,
I wanted to hear. This is starting with 20. You went up, and I want to talk about some of your, I guess, your first original creation. Spider-Man is Typeface. Talk about Typeface, man.
I tell you what, I'll trade you. I'll talk about Typeface if you let me talk about Maximum Security next. The next one.
Oh God, I didn't even have that on my notes, but go ahead.
So Typeface, it was Bucky and I had done a few fun issues, right?
Right.
There was one, you know, that was a ton of fun, and it was about him explaining to us who Uncle Ben was and what his relationship was. We had the idea that he would fight a gang of mimes, and that was really funny, right? We loved that story, and we used to do funny little jokes. You know, there's a whole sequence at one point where he's I don't even know if Mary Jane's in the picture, but he's in his apartment. He's by himself, and he shares an apartment with Randy, his friend. Right. And he's singing Queen, and he's eating a tub of ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
And he's wandering around making a load of noise, and the towel falls off just as he bows, right? And Randy walks in and is like, well, that was unexpected. And he walks right back out again. And they used to let us do that, right? They would never let us do that.
I think Randy was with, what's her name from the Bugle? I can't think of her name right now.
Oh, yeah. Now it's been a while since I wrote it. But, you know, the point was that they used to let us have fun, right? They never say you can't do that, or you're wasting real estate in a comic or something. Yeah. They literally had to trust the creators. And so Bucky and I did it. And so getting back to Typeface, we said, let's do like an intentionally bad joke, right?
There he is.
It's a terrible joke. He has type all over his face.
Yeah.
And he throws letters around, and I thought that's as good of a bad Spider-Man villain as I've ever. You know, that's what it was.
You're in on the joke. You know, it's a bad villain.
Oh, we knew it was a bad villain, but we loved the bad villain. We thought he was great. We thought he was funny. Yeah. And we realized you can still tell an interesting story with that person. He's still, you know, there's elements of who he is. And we loved it, right? Like, it was a stupid character, but it, just to be clear, we knew it was a stupid character, and we figured people would go, that's pretty funny, right? You know, like, and then other people were like, well, I don't know about that new character. I'm like, well, neither do I.
There you go.
Yeah, there he is. He's got a, you know, he's just
got like a Flava Flav thing going on around his neck, you know?
Yeah, he does, right? And there's a funny thing too. We called him Gordon Thomas, right? So if you actually look up Gordon Thomas online, if you get a different browser and you look up Gordon Thomas did, I love atrocious music, right? So if you find Gordon
right here,
no, look up Gordon Thomas, bad music. There you go, bad musician.
Outsider musician right here.
Gordon Thomas is the worst musician I've ever heard. He is unbelievable. And if you go to his official website, gordonthomas.com, you can hear maybe a couple of his. Yeah, there you go. You can hear a couple of his songs. Now, here's the thing about this guy. Yeah. He's a sweet dude. Yeah, listen to his music. If you
I believe that nothing happens until it's
Can you hear it?
Complications.
Oh no, this is his documentary, which is awesome.
Oh,
go to another one. Let's see. I'll give you one to play. Hang on. Try Brown Baby. Yeah, they're all good.
Okay.
He's atrocious.
A listener in New York got exactly naive.
Oh, here we go.
I know it's you. And I hope
Wow. And I can't sing, so I can't talk, but
I love this man, right?
okay.
I love this man because I have a funny sense of humor, and I love Gordon Thomas.
No
He used
doubt.
to appear on the front of all of his albums, and his record label was called Sam Hot Records, which, by the way, for those of you not paying attention, is an anagram of the word Thomas.
Oh.
Right? And he would appear on the front of all of his records holding a trombone, except A, he couldn't play the trombone, and B, there is no trombone on any of the records, right?
Wow.
So I loved him, and I would do stuff like that. Like the name of Typeface, his actual name is Gordon Thomas, and that's named after that dude right there.
After that dude. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. That's really funny. By the way, Vinkman says Glory Grant. We couldn't think of Glory Grant.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. And Stoggy has this in. We need 3 more backers. We were going to do 4. We got 1 in the time we've been talking. So there you go.
All right.
Give away a copy of Spectacular Spider-Man 27 signed by Paul if we get 3 more backers for his Kickstarter.
Perfect.
Again, the link to Kickstarter is in this video description on Facebook and YouTube. So, okay, you asked me to talk. I wasn't going to, but let me go back. I'm losing my tabs. Hold on a second.
Sorry about that.
Let's see. I got distracted by Gordon Thomas. Didn't expect that.
Yeah. See, I told you this is going to go on for more than an hour, man, because we get lots to talk about, right?
Okay, here, let me pull. There you go. That's the issue you want to talk about.
All right.
Do you like that issue? I'm not.
No.
No offense, but I'm not a fan.
No, that thing was a mess, and let me tell you why it was a mess. So they call me up and they say, I sent them in a script for 24, and they called me up and they said, what's this? What's this script? And I said, what do you mean, what's this script? It's just next month. And they said, no. Where's the tie-in?
Oh, God.
And I said, what tie-in are you talking about? Apparently, they had this is typical of Marvel. They had a company-wide tie-in that month to a thing called Maximum Security. Yeah. But they didn't tell me. And presumably it's because I'm just not an insider, right? I don't get on the phone with all these people. I don't know what's going on. And so now they're like, no, you need to write a tie-in to Maximum Security. And I said, well, what's it about? And they sent me some breakdown, and I couldn't make head or tail of it, Brad. I didn't even know what it was. I couldn't understand it. And so,
well, I mean, we start off with that. What's going on? Poor Peter's about to get probed, dude.
Yeah, the only thing I could think that was really funny is that he's about to get probed.
Yeah. Well, if you start from there, where can you go? I know.
I knew that there were comedy possibilities. I like in the comments, I just saw that Adam says, I don't really remember Maximum Security at all. Funnily enough, Adam, I don't remember Maximum Security much when I wrote it.
Now, George remembers it, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and so I'd be honest, at the last minute, I had to write some tie-in to something that they couldn't even adequately explain. I call my editor out, I call Ralph and say, Ralph, can you tell me what this thing is? And he's like, nope, I have no idea. They sent it to me, and I don't make any head or tail of it either. And I said, I'll do my best, dude. And that's what you got.
And Gordon Thomas was pissed. His story got cut short by Maximum Security.
It got cut short, and that was so frustrating. It got cut short by Maximum Security. And we were just like, is this how it's going to be? And so we got back in touch with them, and I said, look, do me a favor, right? Like, let's never do that again. And they said, funnily enough, we really want you to do a Green Goblin story.
Oh, right? Yeah. But that one was much better. You did it great with that one.
That's okay, because I kind of knew what I wanted to do with the Green Goblin anyway, right? Yeah. And in Green Goblin, we put in something which I have been known to do that had never been done before. That Green Goblin story was a 2-parter that I did with Howard Mackey, who was the other writer on the book.
Right.
And, I know Howard's not been shy about it. I mean, basically it was my story. Something that I sort of pitched to Howard and said, let's go down this road. But what I liked about it was that we managed to do something with the Green Goblin that had not been done, which is to say why, in part, he became who he became.
Right.
And it had to do with his father locking him. By the way, here comes the story behind the story, right?
Right.
His father locking him in a mansion to make him grow up as a little tiny kid. And it's an abandoned mansion. and he is terrified. He's a tiny little boy, and he gets put in a mansion in a storm. And the dad says, if you get through the night, you'll be an Osborn, right? So it's really abusive. And he then says to Spider-Man, what happened was I didn't become afraid of the dark. I became afraid of the light. I imagined that there was a little green goblin running around in that mansion. I could hear the chittering sound of this goblin. And it wasn't the darkness that I was afraid of. I was afraid of the lightning going off and showing me this thing standing right in front of me. Right. And it shows you why he turned to the darkness and he was afraid of the light. Right. Because
that's what he essentially did to Peter when he abducted him, put him in hold up.
That's right.
So yeah. I'm not sure if it's this issue, but I love the line that you put in there. He's a father without a son, and Peter is a son without a father. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's been ever attributed to those two characters, but it sums them up both perfectly, I think. Yeah. Talk about that line.
Well, we had, so apparently at the time that this thing had been written, before it got published, Raimi had been trying to work out how to finish out that first film, and they realized that the relationship that we created in that story was what they wanted, which is the Green Goblin realizes my son is useless. The one who's worthy of being my son is Peter Parker. That's my son. Yeah. That's my heir. And so that's what became a basis for the way that they did the story in the film.
No doubt. And the scene up on the rooftop in the first Raimi film, very similar to your Goblin. When you saw that in the theater, you were like, yeah, that's me.
Listen, I've had an entire career of watching my stuff get appropriated by Marvel for their things. I mean, to be fair, I did create the origin of Wolverine, and they said you're not going to get credited because Stan's the only one by contract that gets credited. So,
well, and it was in the least coolest Wolverine movie of all of them too. That's your origin, but
but my stuff showed up. I mean, if you look at the dogs in the Hulk movie, those are mine. If you look at the moment in the rain where they kiss, where he comes down and kisses Mary Jane with his hood pulled up, that's literally from a cover I designed with Curry Andrews for Charlie Adler's one. And so you can see my stuff show up in their films all the time. Right. They actually started interviewing me. This is like a company policy thing. They started interviewing me about my contributions to Spider-Man in the movie, and then they never showed them. Because they realized
on the special features or something.
Yeah, they realized that they might actually be walking themselves into a legal minefield.
Oh, that sucks. If I could pull it up, I'm not sure if I've got it in a tab. The Marvel Unlimited app is kind of wigging out on me, but I thought Typeface died in your Civil War. I thought you killed him.
Yeah. I think we do him in. It's funny you mention that because I hadn't thought about him in a while, but I think we tagged him. I think he got done in.
However, he's back.
Is he really?
He's back, and I can't pull it up, but I've got the issue in here. I'll just add that. And well, I don't want to show the whole thing. I might get in trouble. But in Deadpool Spider-Man number 12,
this is great.
They team up with Santa. And if he's in the background. Yeah. So if I wish Marvel Unlimited would work with me. It's just. Anyway, he's not dead. You did not kill Typeface is not dead. You weren't the final voice on Typeface.
I can't even kill my own characters.
You can't, man.
Oh well.
Let's see. What else did I want to hit you up about? You were just talking about Charlie Adler, who from Adlard. Is that right?
Yeah, Charlie Adler. Yeah.
He is the artist on Walking Dead.
Yep.
Where people know him probably best, but he worked with you on, if I can copy this and go here. There we go. So that cover, you talked about, that was the inspiration for the upside down kiss on the first Spider-Man film. And if you look inside the art, here, I will pull some of the art. It's interesting to see his take, because I'm used to seeing zombies. Right. But to see his take on Mary Jane and Peter Parker,
this is before cool. This is before he did zombies.
Yeah, exactly. Well, will it work? Anyway, that's just a cool thing. Little behind the scenes. If you didn't know, you worked with him before Walking Dead.
Yeah,
so
like there's a story behind all of these stories. There really is, and one thing that was really cool, and I think you and I talked about this one other time, was that when I wrote Mary Jane and him being married, what I found was kind of interesting was that I found it easy to write them being married, right? And I never understood why almost every other writer wrote him as a liar and her as a nagging idiot, you know? Like she would complain and then he would hide the fact that he was Spider-Man, and it was almost like the most naive view of marriage. And at the same time, I had met my wife and I was getting married, right? And my wife is, the fans know her as Nigh Perfect. She's she's a funny lady, and she's just brilliant and beautiful, and I'm super lucky. She has this funny little sense of humor, and I thought, why aren't we writing the two of them in love and agreeing about things and enjoying each other's company? So I felt that like ours was a quiet revolution, honestly, Brad. Like we occasionally would write like just a fun little thing. I seem to remember somewhere we wrote a bit about them going to a Klingon wedding, because I was
going to talk about that. Yeah.
I was invited to a Klingon wedding with my wife, and we ended up going to this wedding. It was crazy.
I was gonna ask you that later when we got to it, but is that writing from experience? I guess it is.
Yeah,
two Klingons tied the knot.
All the time, seeing two Klingons tied the knot, and I was a special guest because they were just really big fans of comics, and so I sat in this wedding. I think it was at San Diego Comic-Con, and they got married, and me and Melinda were there, my wife, and we were like, "What's going on?"
That's hysterical. So, here we go. I got some Charlie Adlard art right there.
Yeah.
That's not zombies. That's Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
That's right. This is when I think this is the one where he can't believe she's back. He can't believe it.
Yeah. You wrote them at a very odd time. It was almost like you had to write Spider-Man as a widow. Yeah. I mean, no other writer has ever written him as a widow. What is that like? That makes him really old, I think.
Okay, so what you do is you juxtapose tragedy against comedy. Yeah. And that's what makes you feel tragic. If you want to write a comedy, put something difficult in there. Speak to any comedian. Look at Robin Williams and the torment that he would go through to be the brilliant comedian he was, right? And so in my run, we had this tragedy. He'd lost his wife, and it was frustrating, really, because I knew that he hadn't lost his wife, so that was annoying because she was coming back. But I wanted to write that tragedy, and I wanted to make it feel like he had been through closure and the stages of grief and the things that are difficult in losing somebody. And so we did a great scene, and I don't know if you remember this scene, but this is one of my favorites I ever wrote too. We did a scene in one of the books where he is in a bar and he has his wedding ring and he's put it on his right hand. Because he believes that when your wedding ring's on the other hand, it means that you're showing everybody that you're a widow. But it doesn't mean that. It can mean that you're gay and you are sort of like signifying, that I'm not sure if it's someone who's gay who's married, a gay married man. I'm not sure. But so he's in the bar and he's talking to this dude and he's like, the guy says, "You too, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah." No, he says to the guy, he says, "You too, huh?" And the guy's like, yeah, sure. And they get talking and they end up talking at cross purposes. And he goes back to Randy and he says, "Oh, man, the nicest guy. He's a widow like me." And he explains it. And Randy's like, "Dude,
you don't even know." Yeah.
You have no idea what you just did. And Peter's like, "I need to go tell him. I'm really sorry."
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I'm with Peter on that. I had no idea you put your ring on the other finger. That's your.
It was something that I read about, and I thought, well, I love the idea that in the biggest tragedy where because actually that scene was all about him saying to the world, "Okay, I get it. I've lost you, and there's nothing I can do, and I can't go back. And it's about time, symbolically," he says, "that I go and I put my ring on my other finger." Right?
Exactly.
A little bit, that he's screwing it
up. Real quick, one of our panelists who's been commenting is George, and George met you a long time ago, I think in the 90s, and it was I think I'll tell his story since he's not on the line because he's told this story before, and I want to see if you remember it. You and him were at a convention and you were engaged, and next to one of your booths was a Playboy Playmate or something, and they were hitting on you, and he knew that you were engaged, so he walked up to you and saved you from bad decisions.
Listen, let me be clear.
Okay.
There's no way that I would have made a bad decision. George, I appreciate you coming to my rescue and my honor, sir. The day that I met my wife, and she's beautiful, my wife is beautiful, I went, that's it, I don't need another one. I'm good. I am good, and I've been that way ever since. Every single day I've known her, I felt the same way. But yeah, that's kind of cool, right? Because George, I appreciate you. That was really well done. I don't know which was who was hitting on me, but I like the story because it certainly adds to my street credibility. Thank you.
As if you need a street cred. Michael Reed says, "I got the Jenkins." There you go.
Hi, Michael.
Oh, you were at the Top Cow booth, is what George says. So there you go.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I can believe that.
The Playmate was like, you'd rather hang out with him than me.
That's awesome. Yeah, listen, man, one of the things about it is if you live in this country with a British accent, it's like a license to print money. And so for a while, right, I wrote Spider-Man. I played soccer like 6 matches a week or something. I'm totally in shape. I drive a Blues Brothers cop car. I wear a leather jacket. I got earrings. I got a British accent. It's basically
your catnip.
Call your own shot, right? And what can you say?
So we go from Typeface to your other villain that you created was Fusion. Talk about this one.
So
I think it's a great origin of a villain.
Yeah.
A dad whose son died wearing a Spider-Man suit and swung from a rope and died.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great hook.
Yeah, and he blamed Spider-Man for being Spider-Man, and the child dies, and so he hates him.
Yeah.
And what he does to him is he has the ability to project an emotion and a feeling. That is based on a true story, though. Everything is. I broke my neck playing football.
Oh, wow.
And for maybe 3 or 4 months, I was unable to walk properly. I actually laid in a bathtub. I went down to about 140 pounds. I was nauseated constantly. And I had to have all this therapy. And I was very lucky that I didn't do the Christopher Reeve, actually. I was quite close to it. I do, to this day, have a little bump that hits my spinal cord. So I deal with a lot of vertigo. And what's interesting about it is that I wrote about that in Fusion, right? It was like he is now stranded and he thinks he's broken his neck. And so it's all about the will that you have to stand up after you've had your neck broken or you've had a really bad injury. But it was a lot about me writing about the compassion I feel for people that never do have the luck or the fortitude that I had, and they are paralyzed or they have a debilitating illness. And then in part, it was about the fact that I do deal with a debilitating illness. I have vertigo and I still have it. And you can't see it on me. You can't tell that I have it because it's like the difference between being blind and deaf. We feel sorry for the blind guy and we think the deaf guy is stupid.
Yeah.
Right?
If you can't see it, we're all visual.
Compassion. So Fusion was a cool character. That was a very personal story, the one about him breaking his neck.
During that Fusion story, we were introduced to a couple characters who I think sadly should still be in the Spider-Man universe. My man Barker, who has his own Wikipedia page.
Yeah,
well, it's a Marvel Wikipedia. So check out Barker. I love Barker. Are you a dog? I mean, we saw the cat in the Kickstarter video. Are you a dog guy?
So I love dogs too. We got a dog. We have a little dog called Sprocket. She's half dog and half goat, right?
Is it like from Fraggle Rock?
Yeah. She's
nice.
Sprocket, right?
Yeah.
But so Barker is based on this Rottweiler that we used to go walk in our court. We had a Welsh Corgi.
Okay.
Called Colin. And my wife and I, when we just got married, the first thing that we bought was a dog, and it was this little Welsh Corgi, and we would walk him down the street, and we would get to Rock, the Rottweiler, who Barker is based on.
Nice.
So Rock would run up and down, and he would just flip out. And Rottweilers, what you have to understand is they're the sweetest. They're funny dogs, man. They're not. You can train them to be awful, but
kind of like pit bulls. I've never met a mean pit bull or a Rottweiler.
Right, and so Rock was this funny dog, and one day we're walking, and I'm looking, and I realized Rock would see me coming, and he would run back into his kennel, and then he would run out again. And it was like when he ran in his kennel, it was almost like you could hear him like soaring and stuff. Right? Like, I didn't know what Rock was up to, but I came up with this whole story about how he would go in there. He's building something.
Yeah.
And
I love that part, because in the Marvel universe, a dog could be building something to kill you.
A dog could be building something, exactly. Right? And so we had this whole thing about Rock and the dog Barker.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about Barker is the person who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Oh, exactly. I think that's so clever.
Yeah.
I think that's so clever. Well, you can't forget Barker's owner, Karen, who also has a Wikipedia. Of course, they used the best picture of Karen over here.
They did. Yeah. So Karen... so it's funny that George brought up the Playboy girl.
Okay. By the way, he says it's confirmed the chicks are into Paul.
So Karen's kind of like the amalgam of it's not temptation for me. I didn't ever get tempted.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. My wife doesn't watch my streams anyway, but I wasn't tempted, but I definitely had a lot of temptation, I suppose you could say, because yeah, you know, like, and so Karen is that like sexy vamp. And I'm telling you, Brad, there's one story that I wrote, and there are 2 or 3 Spider-Man stories that we didn't do, and one of them you would have loved, but unfortunately, you know, at a certain point I didn't do any more Spider-Man. But Karen was a cool character. He was totally, you could never tell if she was into Peter or not, but she was sort of in his face, and she was across the street, and she would come out on her balcony wearing lingerie, and he'd be like, okay, no.
When in the 2012 interview, you said you wanted to surround Peter with hot chicks.
Yeah.
Just to because Mary Jane was gone and temptation was around, you know?
Just to show like he does care about, you know, people, and he's genuine, and he's not tempted, but they're there, right? So the story that I never got to write was one where so you're missing one character, and one character that people...
Oh, please tell me. I have, if this is what I think you're going to do, are you going to hook him up with John Anderson?
No, John was my mate. I played. Big John was a guy that I played with, so he was my mate from New Zealand, and we played football together.
I always thought John and Karen would have been perfect.
John, John. No, that could have been. I think we tried to get them together anyway at one point, but John was just hideous with women anyway. The real John was terrible, and so
he's the Kiwi kid, man.
Yeah, he's the Kiwi kid, and he gives him the Kiwi kid. No, the character that I was going to bring up was the piece of cheese that was called Kevin.
Oh, Kevin the cheese. Okay, yeah.
So we had this piece of cheese in his fridge when he lived with Randy.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, I'm keeping the piece of cheese. It's my pet." And then later on in one of the issues, we actually showed that when he opened the fridge, the cheese had a little heart emoji. It was like, "Oh, it's Peter." And then he closed the fridge door, and his little heart would get broken every time. Like
so the cheese is sentient.
Right, the cheese is sentient. And so I wrote an issue, and we never did it, and it was basically Peter's crazy day. And at the very beginning of the issue, he wakes up and he looks across, and Karen is in bed next to him, and then it's like, he's like, I don't know how I got here. And then he looks around, and he's got like a snorkel and flippers on, and he's wearing a tutu, and he has no idea how he got there. And the story's all about how he accidentally ate a piece of the cheese, and it messed him up when he went on patrol, and he kept getting concussions, right? And so his behavior gets more and more erratic, and it had the big wheel in it. It had, I'm not kidding. And it was a total comedy issue about this whole comedy of errors. And he hasn't done anything with Karen, but he ends up waking up next to her and looking across and going, and I think that we kind of appropriated at one point, and we had him wake up next to the dog, right? He woke up next to Barker, and he was like, okay.
Oh, that's hysterical. Well, you know, in the Marvel Universe, cheese can have mutant powers, evidently. It could mess with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you're talking about some of your... Oh, go ahead.
I said, well, he said it was sentient. He said it was a piece of cheese he was trying to grow, and then it ends up that Kevin is sentient, which is kind of cute.
George says, I think Kevin moved at one point there.
Yeah, the cheese? Yeah, he did. Yeah, he moved across the fridge.
Kevin, the sentient cheese. There you go. And Anthony goes, I remember John Anderson flashback. Yeah. Kevin is Kindred. I don't know if you're reading the current Amazing Spider-Man, but we don't know who Kindred is. So we're
could be the cheese, yeah.
Kevin and Kindred. The mime issue we were talking about, one of my favorites, Enough Said issue. I think Bucky is the very first artist to ever do this to Spider-Man. He mooned a villain.
we did some things, right? That they would never. At one point, Spider-Man turns to the Goblin and says, "I'll kill you," because he's really angry. And Ralph called me up and said, "Paul, we can't have him say that." And I said, "Ralph, if he doesn't say I'll kill you, if he can't get angry, he's Jesus Christ, and he's not Jesus Christ.
Yes, he's human.
He's Spider-Man, he's a person. Yes. What makes him a hero is that he gets past his anger very quickly."
Yeah.
We did Spider-Man mooning the mimes.
Oh, love that. Just love it.
We did
There's the mime.
We had Spider-Man. Sorry, I hope I can say one off-color word. We actually had Spider-Man call someone a bastard. He said, "You bastard." So they kind of let me be British for a while. But in the mime issue, do you remember how he traps the mimes?
Oh, yeah. Here, I got the panel up. He does a little arrow, doesn't he?
No, so he traps them. If you can, I don't know if you can bring him up, but he points at his bum, and now they all chase him, right? We loved it because they're driving the Mime-mobile, which is a Volkswagen, and they pull up next to the Monk-mobile, which is also a Volkswagen. So they chase him into this place, and he breaks the light. It's all silent, and then they're shooting, and they're trying to get him, and he closes this thing. He's trapped them, and they wake up, and he's laughing at them, and he's trapped them inside plexiglass, like because their mind.
Hysterical. When Spider-Man drops pants, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah. So it was fun. Like we had the best time. Bucky and I. Yeah, I've told you this before. I know. Like one of my favorite memories in my life is when we took over Spider-Man, and Bucky calls me and he says, "You're never going to believe this. We're on the front page of the Sun newspaper, which is the British tabloid." Oh. And I'm like, "There's no way that a kid from where I came from is on the front of the Sun." And he said, "Yeah," and it basically says, "Brits take over America." And it was because two British guys had taken over Spider-Man, right? Yeah. And so I end up on this phone call with him, and we're going, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I just want to bring back his sense of humor, man. I want it to be feel like it's fun." And he and I, it's 3 o'clock in the morning my time. It's like 9 o'clock it's probably 8 o'clock in the morning in Britain. And I have never laughed so hard on a phone call as when we created the story against the mimes and typeface. All of it came in the same conversation. Yeah. We just had the best time. We laughed and laughed. We had the monks. We had all kinds of characters that were it was great.
That's funny. Here, one of my favorites. I liked your first Green Goblin story, but your second one I think is my favorite. This one went into the brains of Norman Osborn. What was that like? I mean, you really got into his head for me.
Well, but I mean, really, what we got into the head of Peter Parker, right? And so here's my feeling: it doesn't matter that he loves Mary Jane, right?
Yeah,
Gwen was his first love. And just because you love someone now doesn't mean to say you weren't in love before. And really what that story is about is that Norman Osborn tries to get to him with doing the worst things he can to the people that Peter is close to. At the time in the story, they had made Peter a teacher, which I actually didn't mind myself. I quite liked that because I think he had the right mind to be a teacher, right?
Yeah. And
they drive a truck into his school driven by Flash, who they have plied with alcohol, even though he'd given up drinking. Right. And it's a message to Peter Parker from Norman Osborn, and it's, "I'm going to take all your people out."
Yeah.
And then Norman Osborn visits the school and talks to Peter in front of everybody and says, "It's terrible what happened." And Peter's like really mad, and he's like, "Yeah, it'd be a shame if something happened in return." And they're talking across at each other right in front of everybody, and there's this antagonism.
Well, that's one thing. Another, that's the best part of Stan Lee's story is when the Peter Parker world merges with the Spider-Man world of conflict. Yes.
Yeah, it's great, and you can see why that works, right?
Yeah.
And so at that point, they face each other down, and there is this big face-off, and I thought that it was the definitive Green Goblin story, frankly, and what it was that they fight, and they realize at a moment we're the same person, and we're killing each other. And Osborn says his thing: "You're going to be my son. You're going to be my heir. You're going to be the next one. Because if I leave this warehouse, I'll kill all your family.
Yeah.
So make a choice. The only way you're ever going to leave this warehouse is if you kill me. That will make you a killer, and that will make you me." And they end up sitting down, and Peter says, "Here's the deal. Go ahead and kill my family, because it's not about killing them. You want me to hate you, and I don't hate you.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't hate you is because of Gwen. Gwen would never let me hate you."
Yeah.
And at that point, he wins.
Yeah, exactly. He called the bluff. He called the bluff. And I don't think it showed you Spider-Man's inner character that I probably would have killed the dude. Most people probably would have killed the Goblin if given the opportunity, but he was so heroic that he didn't do it.
Yeah, and that was the disagreement I'd had with Ralph Macchio. It wasn't a big disagreement. It was just I said he's capable of anger, Ralph, and what's going to make him a hero? Right. That he overcomes his anger.
Right.
Right.
And the last page, Norman, I think you said in a previous interview you wanted him to blow his brains out. I mean, where else is Norman going? Because he has a gun.
I think it's clear. I think what it was, go to that last panel there, Brad, because that's the bit. He's sitting there with a gun. He realizes he cannot win.
Yeah.
But what I had written was that you hear a sound effect, bam, and the pigeons all fly.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that they said, can't do that.
Yeah. Well, they just brought him back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But is that one of your all-time favorite Spider-Man stories, that one? Because it's one of mine, of yours.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's one that I'm proud of because I feel like we wrote a definitive character study on Norman Osborn and Peter. And I actually think that the most audacious part of that, like the boldest part of that, was when they have finished beating each other up and they sit there for a second and they're like, we got to work this out. Yeah. And they laugh, right? They actually laugh at the beginning because Green Goblin goes, they sit there and they're so tired and he goes, you know, when I started this, I was actually going to call myself Mr. Coffee. Because he's just kind of trying to work out what to say, and they both start laughing. And then he said, "Well, that would have been a bit weird, wouldn't it?" You know, and they
no doubt.
Stop. You know,
they're exhausted. I mean, they're
exhausted, and they don't know what to do. So I felt like that was the best part of that thing was that they got to see each other as the same person, as human beings,
right?
And then you can work out the relationship from there. Right. So I think that is one that I'm certainly proud of. You know, you'd be surprised about the one I am the most proud of.
Oh, what is it?
The last issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites too. But another good one, you wrapped up your Peter Parker run with this one.
Mysterio, yeah.
Beautiful looking art again by Bucky. Yeah. One of the things that you did, you gave character development to Uncle Ben, but you also had a chance as a writer to write Aunt May that she knows.
Yes.
Was that nice? Do you like Aunt May knowing?
Nice? I didn't. I'll be honest. I didn't really care for it. I thought it broke it a little bit. But I didn't mind writing it. You know, I mean, I think if you care about how you do stuff, and I don't mind what the status quo is, I can write it. You know, and since she had found out, it was really a conversation they needed to have. They needed to go back over life, and they needed to talk a little bit about everything and find out what was going on. And you know, that was it. They talked about him. They talked about what must have happened, and they kind of get to explore a little bit of like the pain that they all went through when Ben died. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that. You transitioned over to spec because the editors wanted you on to launch a book. Is that how that started, or?
Well, I think they saw that Umberto and I did a pretty good job with the Green Goblin story. They liked what we had done, and Bucky was moving over to Fables at DC,
right?
And they wanted Umberto and I to work together again, which was cool, right? Like, I like working with Umberto, and they bring us on to Spectacular, and the very first thing they do is tell us the rules are going to change now, and we went like, "Why?" And it was because Bill Jemas. Yeah, well, they wanted. First of all, they had us do 18 issues a year. They wanted us to be the cash cow.
Oh, wow.
And also they wanted us to they wanted us to like do interesting stories, but they wanted them in 5-book trades, and I was like, that's really formulaic. Like, I like single issue stories, and I like, because I think you can go pick up a single issue story, read it, know what you got, move on. And what happened was that, you know, you can see that happening, Brad, because we went through at the beginning, you know, the baseball issue, the one about the little boy at the bad end of town, you know, single issue stories, you pick them up, you read them, you remember them. But they not only told us to write a 5-issue thing, but they said, we want Venom. And we had said, well, I was about to do a Carnage story, actually, but what? You know, and so we ended up doing a Venom story with Eddie Brock, and they let me do at least they let me do something interesting, which is they let me suggest that the symbiote fed off of adrenaline. And so it was trying to kill him or make him think he was committing suicide all the time because he had terminal cancer, and that kind of cancer secretes adrenaline.
Right. And like you said, you can make lemonade, man, if you're given some lemons. I mean, you can turn it out.
just let me write it is the thing. Don't tell me what to write, because I think at a certain point, and I'll point you to 1 or 2 issues that they said we need this. Oh. And it never works. One of them was maximum security. Yeah. You know,
got to be that Spider-Man 2 tie-in with Green Goblin. I mean, Doc Ock that doesn't look like Doc Ock.
Yeah. So we did a Doc Ock story that I felt worked, and then 2 months after we finished it, they went, "We want another one because it's coming out with a movie." And I went, "I just did Dr. Octopus. Right. Are you kidding me? I got nothing to say."
Yeah. One that we talked about, those single issue stories. We didn't talk about this last time. This is a beautiful story, also beautifully written, also beautiful art. Yeah. Is this again life imitating? Did you know a kid that was disabled that was told in this story, or how did this come about?
Well, I did not know a person specifically, but I did know how it felt to be trapped because of what happened when I broke my neck. Right. I felt a lot of compassion for people who are struggling with that, and it made me think about it quite often. Right. So, you know, I did kind of research a little bit about what would happen. And people, and so one of the things about that particular issue that I think is really interesting is that, you know, obviously, you know, the painted art is absolutely beautiful. Paulo Rivera is amazing. They had us doing the Mythos book, so they wanted us to
those are
train first before and to see how it came out. So Paulo's like unlike any other artist. Yeah. And what happened was we did that issue, and at a certain point, we wrote a guy who's afflicted with cerebral palsy, and he sits up on the roof because his dad and his sister will take him up there, and he says, you know, by the time they leave, like, they walk down the stairs and I go flying, right? So he had this great imagination, and it was based on a thing that I heard from a guy called Christopher Nolan, who was a poet from Ireland who had the same thing happen. And he wrote a book called Damn Burst of Dreams when they found out that his brain was so incredible. He's such a great poet. So this kid ends up witnessing a fight between Spider-Man and Morbius, the living vampire. And it has one of my favorite lines I ever wrote in it, where Spider-Man eventually takes his mask off and shows the kid who he is as a gift to say, I'm with you. And the kid says, I feel sorry for him.
Well, I can't think of a better view than the top of a building watching the Marvel Universe happening.
Yeah. Right. And so the kid gets the front row seat.
I can show you that. This is one of your favorite scenes.
Yeah.
Does the weirdest thing. There you go. He shows his identity to the kid and takes a bow nonetheless.
Yeah, he says, if you go back, he says here. The other one, he says.
Right here?
Yeah, he says, you know, ordinary face, sad. He tries to smile.
Yeah.
And he wants me to be okay, and he's giving me this little gift. You know,
that's really nice.
I love that.
Beautiful, again, beautiful. And the one, why do you think the comic industry is in the trade right for 5 issues mode? Wouldn't they rather have 5 good single issues as opposed to 1?
Well, apparently not. Right?
I don't get it.
You know, I'm actually looking in the comments here, and I see someone made a comment about you know, being a twin of someone with CP. And I will tell you, Zach, something that happened to me when that issue came out. So a few people, like a couple of people, decided to do something which really wasn't very pleasant, actually. They wanted to complain about that story, and they pretended that they were more than the 2 people they were. So they actually sent in letters of complaint from like 50 or 60 emails. And my editor, Tom Brevoort, was really frustrated, really annoyed about it. because he's like, you're trying to hijack. And the reason they didn't like the story was because at one point, the kid who's afflicted with CP says, yeah, I acted like an idiot. Right. He says, yeah, I kind of acted up today because I wanted my own way or something. And they said, the kid can't be a bad guy. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. What makes it work is that the kid is a person first and happens to be afflicted with cerebral palsy, not the other way. The kid is not a cerebral palsy or a person in a wheelchair they are a person first. So they can be in a good mood, a bad mood, a happy mood. They can act well and they can act badly. And that's what made them a real rounded character. And then everything else second. Right. But I remember that very clearly because Tom sent me those emails. He sent me that correspondence and he was really mad because he said, like, they tried to hijack us and tell it. But we saw through it and we realized it was the same writing from 50 different emails. Oh,
that sucks.
Yeah,
man. You also created the Queen. That was a 5-parter. Was that a mandate to do the Queen?
That one, no, the Queen was ours, but the mandate was the stupid crossover again.
And the organic web shooters. They made
the web shooters. They said, we put them in the movie. You can be the guy that does the web shooters. And I said, I don't get it. I don't see the point. Like, why? No. And they said, well, we know you're the guy that can handle this well. And I said, I don't doubt that I could potentially do that, but I guess my question is why? Here's what made sense to me.
Okay.
He's smart, right? That makes him interesting. It makes him interesting because he made his web shooters. He was smart enough to make them, right? I found that to be really cool. And I get the movie version did this, but I didn't really think that they needed to do that in the comics. And they said, well, we really want you to. And I said, all right, I'll give it a shot then. And so we did. And I never really felt, I always felt that particular bit with the Queen and the crossover with Captain America, again, I didn't even understand it.
Yeah. Well, we talked about some firsts with you. You wrote a widow's Peter Parker. You had a dog as a neighbor. The third thing about that, the Klingon wedding. Well, let's do 4. The fourth one is you knocked up Spider-Man. He was pregnant. The Queen knocked him up. What the heck, dude?
That was worth it. That was worth
it. What? I don't even want to know what that would look like. Do we have 1,000 Spider-Mans coming out of his ass or what?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. But we got him knocked up. It was great. If the Queen would have eaten him or something, it was going to be great. You know?
Oh, you needed a 6th part to show the birth.
I hear that. I hear that they brought her back, by the way, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, she was in Spider Island. Yeah.
Okay.
You aren't missing much.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me look at my notes real quick. We talked about this last time, but it's such a good issue. I want to talk about it again because one thing I've been doing this past week has been I haven't read your stories in 20 years since they came out, and this story I read it again this week. Still holds up, man. This is one of my favorites. Talk about the poker. The poker is absolutely hysterical.
First of all, it should hold up because they're single issues, right? So you should be able to read any of my single issues tomorrow and go, yeah, it's the same now as it should be, right? But yeah, so I'll tell you where it came from was that I realized that if you look at the essence of heroism and you look at the essence of the villain and you look at all of that stuff, it's nothing to do with physical. I mean, the worst story in comics is 2 guys meet each other in the street. Yeah. And one punches the other guy hardest, and that guy wins. That's not a story. That's an event, right? That's a thing. It's a half a page at best. So, and I could see a load of stories that were being written. I felt in a really lazy way because people would write that story. Yeah, my guy's Hulk's much stronger than that guy, and he punches him hardest, and then he wins. And it's like, yeah, but there's no there, right?
Yeah.
And I happened to be watching, I think, poker on TV, and I played a bit of poker. And I realized, listen, man, you know that moment where you're sitting across the table from someone else and you've got a flush and you're thinking, I wonder if he's got a full house, and you're sitting there and you're like, man, it's going to be heroic if I push it all in, or maybe it's going to be smart if I just go, I think I can fold. I mean, who folds with a flush or who, but these poker players are so good. And I realized when you watched professional poker, you could also see that there'd be a villain guy and he would be yelling at everybody.
Exactly.
So where that poker issue came from was that I went to Vegas for a friend's wedding and I had a strange event, and it was one of my favorite things that had ever happened to me. We go for this wedding, and the night before the wedding, I'm kind of on my own and he's busy doing his stuff. So I went out and played poker in a place, and I ran into this like perfect storm of poker. I walked in on a table in Vegas where there was a guy and he was a villain and he was a mean-spirited idiot and he was winning. He was winning. right?
Yeah.
He'd won everybody's money, and he would do this stuff where he would get like a poker card and he would lick it and then stick it on his face so people could see one of the cards that he had in his hand. And the dealer was getting annoyed with him, and everybody at the table hated him, and he had all of their money.
Oh, that's fun.
So I come in. It was the one time I got to be a superhero. I come in and I sit down very quietly, and I start watching this stuff unfolding, and everybody hates this guy, and he's not noticing me. He's noticing everybody else at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And really early on, I got a good hand, and blah blah blah, and I won that hand against him. And he kind of looked at me grudgingly, and he went, "Yeah, nice hand, dude." And I'm like, "You're not a nice person. You don't mean nice hand. You're just mad." But he didn't pay attention to me then. But lo and behold, it came up again, and I beat him again. And a couple of eyes went towards me like, "Hang on a minute, is this our hero?" Later on, I took him for all of his money, and at one point, I bluffed him, and he had like nothing left. He had lost all his money to me, and it was close to $900.
Wow!
And he'd lost it. He was mad. Everybody hated him. They loved me, and
you were him. He was Fisk. Yeah,
I bluffed him 7-2 offsuit. I bluffed him with nothing.
Oh,
and then I showed it to him because I was so frustrated with his behavior, and he stalked off of the table. And I was like, "Man, that was the best thing ever! I got to be a superhero, right?" And I thought, and that story came from that. I'm like, you know what?
That's so cool.
That's the essence of the fight between the hero and the villain.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote that book.
That was I love that Fisk walks in, hands each other 50 grand. He says, "I want to beat you guys like this." It's so cool.
He says, "I'm going to give you this money." And you're playing for charity, and I'm going to win my money back, and I'm going to buy myself a boat, and then I'm going to win your money back, and I'm going to spend it on cigars.
Exactly.
It's great.
That's so cool. We kind of talked about Marvel's not pulling it up, but issue 22 is Mindworm.
Yeah. Again,
you just took a villain who I think is universally despised. I think Jerry Conway wrote him back in the 70s, and nobody did anything with him except you.
But why was he despised?
Well, I mean, not despised. He was just one of those villains that ignored is, I guess ignored is a better word. Yeah. But you dig villains like that you could blank slate, essentially, maybe a little backstory, but you can do what you want with them. Oh, here we go.
There's no character. Yeah, there is. There's no character that isn't great. And I actually, listen, man, that is a really meaningful issue, that one. I'm very proud of that one because
I agree.
It was about a guy. It was about Peter Parker coming upon a guy and realizing there, but for the grace of God and a couple of lucky breaks go I, right? Like this guy, Mindworm, has a mental health issue. He has dementia. He's trapped. And it came from a real moment. And I'll tell you what it was, right? I wish, I don't know if can you get inside that issue and show it for a second?
Yeah. It's kind of wigging out on me a little bit.
Yeah. Because there's something I want to show you guys that it goes to show you that I bring it from my real life, and it was something that happened to me in Spain. On the front, if you could read it, it says.
I can pull that up. I'm not having much luck pulling up the issue though on that.
Yeah, understood. It talks about an infernal triangle, right? And I wrote about an infernal triangle.
Okay.
What it was is that I was in Spain and I saw a street guy, and he had a plate that he was begging for money, but he hadn't had the mind to realize he needed to take his bottle of alcohol away, because no one was going to put money in his thing when his alcohol was sitting right next to it. But he was so far gone mentally, and he was so drunk that he couldn't put it together. So it became this infernal triangle: him, the alcohol, and his plate that he's begging from, and no one gave him a penny. Right? And I saw that, and I thought, I do talk to, I'm that guy, unfortunately. I will talk to homeless people, and I will talk to people and meet them and find out their name. Even if I think that I'm giving them money for booze, I say, you can do whatever you want to with it. I ask you one thing, what's your name? And they tell me, I'll say, where are you from? And they tell me, and then I give them money. Because I want them to be, even to me, just a human being to themselves or something, right?
Right.
And so that's what we wrote with Mindworm, was that he was mentally ill, and that he had fallen into homelessness, and that his mental power had messed up the entire neighborhood. It was literally psychic residue that smashed this entire. Yeah. And Spider-Man finds him and tries to help him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a great story. In the reread this past week, I'd honestly, I liked it 15 years ago, but I just have another new appreciation of it because the other ones often get overlooked, but that one is a very strong issue. Another strong one, which is your favorite, you said, is your very last issue. Very personal story, you said, for this one.
Yes, it is.
Talk about this one. You had Bucky come back for this one.
Well, first of all, I had Bucky come back. So we got to write the very first story really in my run, right? Obviously I did the web spinners first, but we did the first story and it was about him visiting Ben. And then it was all these years later, I'd now written Spider-Man for many years, right? Like maybe 5 years, something like that.
99 to 2005.
Yeah. And so I wanted to say goodbye, but I wanted to say the thing that I thought was the most important, right? When you get down to it, he was going to be a superhero, whether he was a superhero or not. That's who he was, and that's who Peter Parker is. It's never anything to do with the guy in the costume. It's the guy in the costume that is everything. It's who Peter Parker is and who he's going to become, and it comes from who he is innately. It comes from who shapes him. And so I wanted to talk about a thing that I felt would shape him. So the personal side of that story is that I was raised by a single mom. My dad left when I was 5. I was homeless when I was a kid. We lived in a caravan. What people know me of in America is not who I was before I came to America. And it's kind of crazy. And I started talking about it maybe 2 or 3 years ago publicly. But, I lived in a house with no electricity. I mean, the origin of Wolverine, the very first issue is called The Hill. And it's all about the kid at the bottom of the hill looking up at the farm with all the lights blazing, and that kid was me, right? And so I grew up that way. I know how it feels to be very hungry. I know how it is to not have any money for electricity, to not live in a house, to live in a caravan. And so growing up like that, not having a dad, because my dad left when I was 5, but I wanted to do things for my dad. I wished that my dad was there. I wanted my dad to come back. I wanted to prove to my dad. And so what I did was I turned to like the light side, right? I was like literally the white sheep in my family. They're all like a bunch of pikeys, right? They live in caravans. My brother to this day lives in a caravan that's a scrappy in a place with no electricity, right? And he loves it. That's where he lives. And what I wanted to do was to have the real reason why Peter became who he was. It's kind of the real reason why I became who I became, because I felt a massive kinship with that character. When people ask me which character are you most like, I always go Spider-Man. That's just who I am, right? And so what it was, Peter in that story, you find out that, and Ben tells him, the ghost of Ben says to him, listen, you were always going to be this person. And the reason is because of your parents. Like, he was an orphan. He was a tiny little kid when they were gone, right? Now, there's all this backstory. Maybe they were spies and, okay, right, that's cool. But all it is, it's a story about how he wanted to be in the school play and he wanted to be a spider and he wanted to have 8 legs. And so he got all these legs on and he's ready to go up on stage. And his parents are there and that whole audience is watching him.
There you go.
And he freezes.
Right there.
He can't deliver his lines. And there he is. And this is his parents, right? Like, this is his line. He's been practicing all week. And he fails.
I'll warm up the car. There you go.
he fails, right?
He failed. He can't. Stage fright.
And there I was, and there you were. And I'm failing and feeling like an idiot. That was his memory of his parents.
Yeah.
And so why he became Spider-Man was to prove to his parents that he was somebody and that he could succeed. Yeah. And so Ben tells him, you think you're Spider-Man because of what happened to me. That's not true. That's not all of it. You're Spider-Man because you desperately wanted to prove to your mom and dad that you could perform.
Yeah. You were always going to be someone like Spider-Man, with or without your powers. Just a beautiful story. And then you tug on my heartstrings. You make Uncle Ben dissolve again, like he did in the baseball field. Or Bucky also makes your heart strings pull. One thing about this story, I read it. I didn't remember it 15 years ago. What is in that box? What do you think is in this box that he left?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true.
I've said that repeatedly. People ask me what's in the box. What does he leave for May? Because May comes and finds the box, and
it's over here. It's kind of like a Pulp Fiction thing. What's inside the box? You decide as the reader.
She comes to the box, and Peter has left the box, right? And he sees the 2 angel wings, right? He's made 2 angel wings in the snow because one for him, one for Ben.
Yeah.
And she knows he's been there, and she knows that it's everything. Like Ben is everything to Peter.
Yeah.
And she finds this present. It doesn't matter what's in the box. It's something that Peter has left.
Yeah.
Or Uncle Ben.
Yeah. And there you go. That'll get you right there. It gets you right in the heart. But and I love the little pair of twits.
That's the point. The point was she would always call them a pair.
There you go.
Right? And they would do stupid stuff, right?
Yeah.
They played super, and we went all the way around full circle. We did the Calvin and Hobbes with the snowman.
Exactly.
And now she sees this beautiful gift, whatever it will be, and she goes, "You pair of twits."
Yeah, exactly. Just beautiful. I can see why that's one of your favorites. One of mine also.
Yeah.
Couple things I've wanted to know over the years. During your run, Straczynski was on Amazing. You had Brian Michael Bendis on Ultimate. Do you think you were a little overlooked with Peter Parker, or were you fine being in your little niche?
Yeah, I was fine. I didn't care, man. Like, listen, so something happened to me at Marvel that I thought was really funny. One time I had a very curious conversation with Joe Quesada, who said to me, "We're annoyed with you."
Oh.
And I said, "Why?" I said, "I live in Atlanta. I don't talk to anybody. I'm not involved in the politics of comics. I see you guys at convention. I'm the first at the booth. I sign as many comics as anybody wants me to. I'm the last to leave. And if any fan finds me, I sign their comic. I'm publicly, I think I'm the dude that helps you be like, I like everybody. I don't do politics. I don't go on public rants. I don't do any of that stuff. And my books sell, and you love them." And he said, "That is the problem. As far as we're concerned, you're Neil Gaiman. The problem is you don't want to be."
Well, I don't know if they want to be fixed. I mean, you haven't written for them since 2011, and my goal or my dream of you coming back is long fleeting. I don't think you're going to come back.
Well, I think no, and I think this is it, right?
Yeah.
They had me when they needed me, right? I came to Marvel and they were in bankruptcy, and in 1997, 98, I did the Inhumans. They won an Eisner. I did the Sentry. They told me no. They complained. It came out. He ended up being a member of the Avengers, and they went, "Look what we did." And I'm like, "No, you didn't. You literally fought me every step of the way." I did Spider-Man. It rebuilt, and so whether Straczynski and Bendis were doing the big stuff, which they're very public. They both have like big internet presences and they do all the stuff, all the politics. We were the quiet revolution. We were the people that fixed Spider-Man before they did.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I was brought in. Marvel said to me at one point, "You fixed stuff for us. You fixed the Hulk for us."
Yep.
And I pitched them Wolverine Origin. People worried about it. And then the crazy thing is, they when you look at Civil War, Civil War is really Civil War Frontlines. I wrote issue 11 of Frontlines before Mark Millar wrote issue 2 of Civil War.
Wow.
So when you see Civil War, you have to realize that Frontlines was generally the book, and it was the man on the street thing. So I had been responsible for reviving Spider-Man, reviving the Hulk, doing the origin of Wolverine, doing the stuff, right? Getting to Civil War and thinking, we're doing great. And then the very next project that came up was World War Hulk. And I said, great, that's a metaphor for Hurricane Katrina. And they said, no, you can't do that.
No.
And I said, you've never told me once that I couldn't do something. What's going on?
Yeah.
Ever. You've never said that. Like, why no? Because all I've ever done has been successful. Why no? And then maybe a year later, they announced they'd sold to Disney, and I went, oh, now I know why, because you were busy, you know. So
Frontline was way more interesting than the main book, says Eric.
Well,
Stoggy also said, they said
Yeah.
you told them no one sent you, and then they stole it from. It probably, as a writer, it's nice to not have a boss so much as an overlord. Is it just a lot more freeing for you? I know you love writing Spider-Man, but that's not your toy box.
Look, listen, honestly, Brad, I could write every Spider-Man story that I wrote. I could write with a different character or a different way.
That's
right?
true.
Like, it's not that, you know, what I wanted to do is bring something to Spider-Man, and we did.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't need Spider-Man to write stories. I think that Marvel need me to write those stories in Spider-Man, I would think, is the other way around. You know, like, you need good stuff, don't you?
Yes.
But what you'll learn if you work in this industry is it's not good that counts. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
It's not great stuff. It's not, it is really, you know, in this business, it's like marketing drives the business. And so, unfortunately, when they said, we think you're Gaiman, and I said, I have no idea what that means. Okay. That what Joe said was, we think you are talent-wise, you just don't want to be him. You don't want to do the press the flesh. You don't, I mean, they actually said the words, you don't come to Marvel and press the flesh. You don't do the politics. And I said, yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me how to do it? I don't even know how to do it. And I think, because I'm a bit more straightforward of a person, and I don't care. I even told him, I don't care if I write Spider-Man. Like, I wish that you cared if I wrote Spider-Man, but I don't care. I could write Iron Man. I could write nobody. Pick one, you know?
Yeah. And this is technically our third interview. You and I did an email exchange when you were on Peter Parker, and you were gracious there. And I asked you questions. You filled it out. It was long before streaming and etc. But you were interacting with fans. I don't know why he thought that you weren't playing the game.
I didn't interact with fans. I really did interact with fans. It was, I think what he meant was and by the way, you know, I see the comment, what did Gaiman never have to do with that? He made his career on Sandman. No, listen, that's not Neil's fault. I used to be Neil's editor, so I know Neil pretty well. And I think what they meant was, we want you to be more public and do more politics and press the flesh. It was something they told me, and do things a certain way. And I said, I don't even know how to do that. And I think they got their answer, right? I was able to do the writing side of it, but they didn't need that at that point. They needed crossovers and public stuff and me on the internet. And I wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, let me go back to what we originally started talking. Well, actually, before we do that, let's promote this one more time before we start taking questions. So fans, while you're watching, all 20 of you, start typing your questions for Paul. We'll take questions live, but also if we get up to 600 backers, Paul is going to give away Spectacular Spider-Man number 27 autographed. And if you back him for his new Fairy Quest. So let's get those up to 600 for Paul. I think that will be a lot of fun, and nice giveaway too. I think that's awesome. So let's see. We'll start scrolling this while we're waiting for questions to come in for Paul. Feel free to write that on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching it from. So I don't think we looked at the updates. You had some new art the last couple of days, I saw. Yeah,
we put some new updates.
I want to look at this cover one more time.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
So beautiful. I just love that. Jennifer Meyer did that one. Let's see here.
And like I said to everybody, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, Jennifer Meyer is going to be your favorite person on the internet. Her stuff is so cool.
Clicked the wrong thing. Whoops. We don't want to watch the Kickstarter magazine. Okay, here we go. Here's some interior art.
Yeah. I mean, we got interior art all over the place. I mean, if you want me to, I can show you the inside of the book.
You want to share your screen? That'll work.
Share a screen. Yeah. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think you have to let me share it, but let's.
We'll go down here and I'll just pop it in.
Let's try this one. Here you go. So I'll show you a couple of images.
Here it comes. There you go.
Yeah. Here's.
That's beautiful. Is that Humberto or is that?
That one's Umberto, yeah.
Okay.
Here's just, the way that the characters are together. I know it sounds crazy, but they act really well together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a really honest story because they're friends, but they're not supposed to be.
Right.
This is
wow.
the head of the Think Police. His name is Mr. Grimm, and he represents what looks like tyranny and fascism. And the Think Police guy is right next to him. But he's basically telling all the animals of the forest, I need you to go and find these people and snitch them out because they're looking for him. Yeah. These are these great, it's just that the characters are so alive, right? Mm-hmm. And I love the way, just to point something out, if you can see over on the side here, Leo, our colorist, Leo Olia.
Oh, they pop.
He'll do like this forced perspective, and he'll basically make things 3D just because of the way he does it. He blows the background out and stuff. His technique is tremendous. This is the other guy. He's the guy that represents like freedom of thought. His name is Anderson. So you got Grimm and of course Hans Christian Andersen.
Is he the map maker?
Yeah, he's the map maker. And Anderson tells them, you have every right to determine your own fate. But the question becomes, if these characters determine their own fate, will they cease to exist? Like, is friendship more important than safety, or is fascism more important than friendship?
Mm-hmm.
And we go through this, right? There's the TV commentator who, I don't do politics, right? You never get me to do politics. But the guy Bill O'Reilly,
right,
once said something that whether you like or dislike this guy, I think, probably feelings quite strong about that guy. He said something that's very true that I heard once, which is people don't want freedom, they want safety.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is quite true, actually.
That's
people
true.
want comfort. Here's the map of Fablewood. So you can see there are genre borders dividing them. So the children's stories would be in one place, and then you'd go to horror stories, and you'd have science fiction and detective fiction and so on. And then again, here's just a couple of images from the thing. So
nice.
It's a beautiful book, and it's just incredibly honest. And I love to, I guess that's why it's good for me to be my own creator. And I'd much rather be able to write honest stories. And so it speaks to what we just spoke about, which is for a brief period of time, from 1997 through to maybe 2007, 10 years, they let me write my stuff. They went, we trust you. We want you to do it because we can't do that wizardy stuff that you do. Can you just do it? And then in 2007, they said, that's it. We're done. No more of that. Let me tell you what to do. And I said, I think it's not for me. I'm probably not your guy.
I think also I saw in the update, this is volume 3 of 4. Are you doing 4 volumes?
Yeah, we're doing 4 of them. So we've done 1 and 2. We're getting 1 and 2 back into print. I kind of want to actually, if you can, hold the phone for 1 second. I kind of want to show people what the books look like because I want your thing. Let me go get one.
Oh, no problem. Again, if you want to ask Paul a question, feel free to type it. I see several coming in. I've got about 4 or 5 ready to go when Paul comes back. We got some from Eric. We got some from Peter Palmer. Matt's got a question. Adam's got a question. Anthony's got a question. Peter Palmer's got a question. But now Paul's got his books right there. I'm going to
one of the things I think is very cool is that I like books that I can keep, right? It's one of the things, so, you got these
hardcover.
What you've got like embossed like covers. So this character is like fully embossed, and the logo's embossed. And then if you see, if I can hold it up to light, see it says do not deviate, and there's like hidden kind of. Nice. So we do like spot UV varnish, and then the thing about it is, size wise, it's like a really big book. So you get these like French album kind of things. This is a kind of book I want to keep. Because I love the trade paperbacks of Spider-Man. It's just the individual issues. And I always used to say to the publisher, why don't you just get 5 of my issues and put them in one? Then you've got a 5-issue book. Who cares, right?
Yeah, 5 single-issue stories is better than 1 drawn out, I would think.
Yeah.
But, yeah. The size of that book reminds me of the storybooks you used to read as a kid. Your mom sits you on your lap, just like you start your story with the mom and the kid.
There is for scale.
Yeah, it's a huge book. Yeah,
it's no doubt. Bigger than Mahid.
Again, go to Kickstarter. Link is in the descriptions of both of these videos that you're watching on Facebook and YouTube. We got some questions coming in for you, Paul. Let me pull some of these one up at a time. Okay. Peter Palmer says, have you read Nick Spencer's current run? If so, what are your thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man? He's the current.
Yeah, I feel bad. Yeah, I'm not a person who follows that, unfortunately. I don't really have any thoughts on it because I don't tend to have much time. The bit that people sort of struggle to understand is I'm not a lifetime comic guy. I love the medium and I love the books, so don't get me wrong. I promise I do love comics, but I also work in video games. I work in film and animation and television. I'm a novelist. I work across media. I do cross-media development and production. So comics is one of the things that I do. And because I am so busy, and I'm currently writing a time travel story that is set in a new digital environment. So we're using digital storytelling. It's not a comic. It's not a film. It's like almost an interactive game style comic, but it's a time travel story. So we can use digital assets to do things that you can't do with a book.
That sounds cool. Yeah.
And so I'm so busy that the idea of following a run. So with all due respect to Nick, who I don't know, I'm afraid I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Anthony says that cassette conversation was crazy. Should be all you have to do is write good stories, which Paul did.
I would be in agreement, Anthony. I don't understand why good stories don't win everything. But if you work in the entertainment industry, you find that good quality content is probably consideration number 5.
I don't get, you would think good quality would instantly equal sales. No. I don't understand why.
It did. I mean, my sales were fine, but yeah. I don't think that's the primary thing for say publishing companies. They want other things like, you know, how active are you on social media? You know, can you do you read a lot of comics, right? The comic industry is sort of goofy. I used to get really frustrated because I studied to be a filmmaker and I studied English as a minor. So I studied writing, and then I ran into editors, and I was an editor for 6-7 years. And I ran into editors, and none of them had any qualification for editing. Not really. People like Karen Berger and Shelley Bond at Vertigo did, you know? Yeah. But by and large, not really.
Adam wants to know, thanks for your great, thoughtful take on Peter Parker and Spider-Man. What's your favorite issue? We talked, is it 27? Spec 27?
Well, I think it's 27, but there are a couple of other ones in there. Okay, so 27 is the one where I wrote what I felt was the truth of Spider-Man, which is he was going to be, it wasn't Ben that did it. It's never a thing. It's never one thing. It's not the death of Ben that made him Spider-Man, because I want to go back to a different character from a different series, different company, which is Two-Face, right? When Two-Face gets splashed with acid and half his face melts, that's not something that drives you crazy. That's just an injury, okay?
Right, yeah.
And what I wrote was Batman, Jekyll and Hyde, which is about how Two-Face was already that person, and this was the catalyst for making him. And he had two sides to his personality anyway, and he was dealing with disorganized type schizophrenia, and that's what happened, right? So I think that issue of Spider-Man, the last one, was good. I do have a very soft spot for the baseball issue, so we'll cover it for a second. The baseball issue is about him going to a baseball game. And I've never had an issue of any comic, even Wolverine Origin, that I've signed more than that issue. And it's because it's very heartfelt, but it's really just the story of a little boy going to a baseball game with his uncle. Yeah. And I wrote it. I went to Great Britain to see my grandfather just before he died, and I used to always have to go visit them. So, you know, I went to see Granddad, and I talked to him a little bit, and he wasn't interested in anything. And then I ended up singing a couple of wartime songs with him from his time living in London in the Blitz, and we sang these songs, and every old person in the old people's home sang those songs with us. And I realized we are connected by these things, and I got on a plane. And I don't know how I knew he was going to die. I knew he was dead when I got on the plane, and I sat on the plane and I wrote that issue on the way back to America from Great Britain, and I landed and they said, yeah, he's gone. And that issue was the baseball issue.
Wow. So. And that just goes to that you can connect, because most everyone has had someone that has passed away that was older and you were a lot younger, and you just connect with them. Yeah. And when Uncle Ben dissolves in the seat that Bucky drew beautifully, it just gets you. I mean, it just gets you. I think it might get you because of what he says. He says, you know, they finally win. The Mets finally won a game after. And at that moment, I looked at him and he didn't have anything to say. And I knew what he meant. I knew that he didn't have to give me the speech. And then he fades out. And then the caption says, and 3 days later, he was dead. Yeah, that gets you right there. And it was a teenage Peter Parker that reluctantly went to the ball game too.
Right.
And if he didn't go to it, he would have missed so much. So it's
he would have missed it. Yeah.
So many good emotional beats in that story. I can see why that one's one of the best ones. Peter Palmer wants to know, what would you do if you had to write a Black Cat story? You wrote her really well in that poker issue. I wish we would have seen a little bit more of her out of you.
Yeah, she's cool, right? I haven't given specific thought to Black Cat, but I could. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard because, like I said, I don't think there's any bad character. I think I can tell you process-wise, not necessarily what the story would be, but process-wise, all you simply do is you just look at what's interesting about that character, find a thing that we can all relate to. Yeah. So I know this is not really answering the question, but I think, Brad, I told you one time I wanted to write like a hypno hustler story. Yeah. Right. The
DJ has stolen his beats when he gets out of jail. I remember.
That's right. So Hypno Hustler, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure the Spider-Man fans will know, but he was basically a guy from like the 70s, and his shtick was that he would play on the stage and hypnotize the audience with his harpies, the singers, and then when everyone was out of their mind, he would run off the stage and steal their wallets, get back on, and no one would ever be the wiser. Right?
Classic bad villain.
Brilliant bad villain. So completely ludicrous. I loved it. And so we were going to do a comedy, but it was like a bittersweet comedy where he comes back from being in jail and he finds out that people are using his music at raves and they are using his, and he's like, I want my royalties, man. I made that music. And so it's kind of a cool comedy / like a real slice of life. And so you can write any character, man. That would have been an interesting way of doing him. Find one, we can write it good. So I'd say the same with Black Cat, you know?
Yeah. Eric wants to know, what's your thoughts on Spider-Man, the MCU, the film Spider-Man, where he's Tony Stark Jr.? I kind of set you up as a negative question. You may like that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, because okay. So at this point, I saw the first few. Once I broke away from Marvel, I've never seen a Marvel film since.
You haven't seen one since what? After Iron Man 2, maybe? I was 20.
I didn't even see Iron Man 2. I saw Iron Man, the first one. Wow. I don't watch them. I saw Black Panther because I actually wanted to see that one.
That was great.
And I felt like that was one that was culturally relevant anyway, so I would see that one. But no, I don't really feel like watching Marvel films, to be honest.
Okay. Well, it's a different take, and I personally don't like it. It makes Spider-Man seem like a sidekick because every motivation is more of Tony Stark as opposed to Uncle Ben.
Yeah, I think that's probably because they've got an actor, right, in who plays Iron Man, you know, and they like him so much that he's going to drive a bunch of their stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, and they've never shown Uncle Ben in this current version. They never even said the word Uncle Ben.
But you know, they should have, right? Like, listen, you should have brought Gwen. Should be something. Gwen is such an important character. Ben is someone who's such an important character. May is important. You know, these are important people. And throwing them away is a bit of a shame, I think, because you've got such great stuff to be able to do with them.
And Aunt May is hot with in these films with what's her name? Marissa Tomei is Aunt May. Okay. So my cousin Vinny's girlfriend is Aunt May.
Okay.
Anyway, Eric also has a question for you about how'd you get your break on the Ninja Turtles in the early 90s?
Break is it. I was playing football, I was playing soccer, and I broke my ankle. And I was over in America. I was teaching music and drama to learning disabled children, and I was working as a waiter. And I knew the guys from Northampton, Massachusetts, and I broke my ankle, and I couldn't do the job I was doing. And I said, "Can I come work with you?" And they said, "Yeah." And you know, 3 or 4 months later, it went insane. Wow! So there you go. I accidentally fell into comics.
Matt wants to know: do you like married or single, or something else altogether of the characters besides that given debate?
Well, the answer is yes, right? Like, when I wrote them when they were married, I like to think that I simply just wrote myself and my wife, and they loved each other and they supported each other and they understood it. They went through difficult times. They went through easy times. That's kind of what happens when you're married and you actually care about each other. So I used to rail a little bit against the way that they would write it because it seemed like a lot of times people were writing it in a different way. They were saying they are arguing all the time. I don't see the point. That's not what marriage is, man. I guess it must be some marriages, but not. Why is that an interesting conflict? Would it not have been a more interesting conflict to write the two of them loving each other and enjoying each other's company and having to face this together? Because guess what? That makes Mary Jane heroic because she has to face it too.
Exactly. A lot of writers do with Mary Jane.
Yeah, and I kind of liked that. And then if he was single, which I had to write him single because she was dead, and then she disappeared at one point. I don't know. And when I had him single, remember I had him living across from Karen, and
Parker.
Yeah, and the dog. And I was like, I'll write that too. So I didn't really mind, you know.
Oh, Eric says Fairy Quest looks beautiful. Stoggy says it won't say boom on the spine.
That's right. Yeah, no, it doesn't. No, we're not doing with boom anymore. Yeah, if you think it's beautiful, Eric, I hope you're going to go back us. That would be great.
No doubt. Here you go. That's how you do it, right there.
Come on, Eric, go show us.
Eric, show us. You said it's beautiful. Let's get that number up to 597. Anthony says, Paul, do you think Spider-Man's more about youth or responsibility? This is a Tom Brevoort thing that he thinks Spider-Man is all about youth. What's your thoughts on this?
So how about the answer to that, if I had to be pressed on it, is a little bit of like, yes, it's probably about how you emerge into the workforce and you realize what responsibility is. You are young, you are not as experienced as you need to be. And it's almost like when you go into the workforce and you're 20 and you realize you're smarter than your boss, right? Like you have to go into the workforce, you have to kind of emerge. It is a coming of age. So I would probably hedge towards responsibility a little bit. Yeah. But I get Tom's point that it is about youth in some extent, because it's about like, how do I navigate all this difficulty, right? And in his case, he's navigating this difficulty and taking on responsibility. So it's probably a bit of each, I would think. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Stoggy talks about Top Cow is doing that now on Kickstarter. I think that was something we were referencing earlier. I'm not sure.
No.
Talking about. My buddy Javi says, "Thank you for bringing such heart to your Spider-Man tales." So that's
thank you, Javi.
Javi says he also enjoyed Typeface.
You're the one.
Yeah. Well, now that I know that you're in on the joke, I think I enjoy Typeface a little bit more. I didn't know that you were trying to go for a bad villain.
We wanted the dumbest villain. We said, like,
it works.
I thought we had been pretty public about it. I thought we said, like, we just were like, that's so funny, man. Like, he's going to be a really crappy villain. Let's go. But what happened was we did have something to say with him. Yeah. And then they gave us Maximum Carnage in the middle of it, and we went, wow.
Or Maximum Security.
Maximum Security, yeah. and it just, like, we were busy with something.
No doubt.
Us, you know?
Way to put me on a different road.
Yeah.
Adam says, thanks for the great backstory. Eric says, I agree that Spider-Man is not Iron Man Jr. Wish that was a better take on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Doggy says, Top Cow is running Witchblade in the Darkness as a hardcover as we chat on Kickstarter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. They're using all my old stuff to make a lot of money, aren't they?
Adam says, I see musical instruments everywhere. What? Paul, do you make your own music? Is it online? Where can we find it?
You know, I do. I'm just trying to think. You know, I bet you, I don't know if we could do this, but we'll give it a try, right?
All right.
Let's see if I can find one piece of me. I'll give you a snippet of music that I do. Yeah, I'm working on this digital project right now, like I said. And one of the things that's interesting about it is I'm writing the music for the project. So that's kind of cool, right? It gets me to... It makes me able to sort of, let's see if I can bring up a piece. We'll find one.
Share your screen and I'll pop it up.
Yeah, I'm going to, yeah. So we will give you a snippet of music. I will see if we can share the screen. Hold on. All right, share screen with an application. Now the question is going to be, no, I bet you it doesn't. Oh, here's how we can do it. Keep talking. I know how to do it. I know how to do it, which is we do it by
in a browser
by putting it in my browser, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's easy enough to put it in the browser and just, you know. Okay, so hang on a second. Ask me another question while I do this. Yeah.
Keep asking questions, and we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. But the dice must flow, aka Greg. What was your favorite villain to write?
In Spider-Man,
or in general. I bet you it's Norman. If I had to guess, was your favorite?
I will say that I feel like we accomplished something.
Yeah,
I feel like we accomplished something with Norman.
Yeah.
So I think it would be fair to say that Norman is a good call, because Norman has such layers of complexity, right? So here's the thing. Norman has passion. Norman has all these things that make it easy to kind of relate to him, right? Dr. Octopus is not. Dr. Octopus is Jeffrey Bundy, right? Yeah. He's a bad human being. He's not a good person. All right, let's try this. I think I got it.
Okay, cool.
I might well have this. This is actually kind of fun. Let's see if I can share my screen and share a bit of music. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm working on. This is actually a piece of music that I wrote in 2 ways, but it's going to be used for the time travel story that we have. So let's. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. I'll stop one thing. Got to do that again because like I told you, you're supposed to share the audio, otherwise you can't make it work. Duh. Share audio.
Oh, by the way, guess what? We got another backer for you. 597. We're up. There you go.
Good. Okay, let's try this then. Let's see if I can share the screen. Are we shared?
Oh yes, I see it. There you are.
All right, let's try this. Tell me if you can hear it.
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah, I hear it. That sounds cool. So are you on keyboard doing that, or is that what your contribution?
Yeah, there's like slide guitar in there, there's guitar, there's the keyboard, a bunch of different stuff.
Very nice.
And this piece of music, because the time travel story is kind of a tragedy about a woman that has to go back. And the piece of music is called Mother.
Cool.
There you go. So that's kind of what I do when I'm not busy doing other stuff.
To answer Adam's question, how do we hear your music? How does he hear it?
I really should post more. I'm working on that project right now, so I'm writing a lot of stuff. That one's just a lot of that is like soundtrack music, right? But I just wrote a song for a woman called Kirsty Hawkshaw, who you can find. And so Kirsty and I'm working on a project with her and Alvin Stardust's son right now. So I do write music. I came here as a musician. I love writing music, but I don't have enough hours in the day, man. It's just something that I do sometimes,
By the way, that last Kickstarter member, Eric, you said, Eric, go sign up. Eric just did. He's number 597.
All right, we need a couple more of you guys. Thank you, Eric, because I promise you'll love the book. That's the point. I think if you liked it and you like the way it looked, you'll probably like it. We appreciate it.
No doubt. Again, Paul is going to give away spec number 27 autographed if he gets up to number 600 backers.
Yeah, come on.
We're almost there. We've gotten 2 within we started talking. We'll do a couple more questions and then we'll call it.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, Stoggy says top. Oh, we already did that one. What was your favorite villain to write? We talked about that one. Here, Matt says, what's your best Aunt May story that you wrote?
I actually feel that the best moment that I wrote with her was in the very first book that I wrote.
20.
Because I wrote these web spinners books, and the chameleon has come to be in the house, and May doesn't realize that the chameleon is not Peter, and he goes in, and she's just jabbering on, and she's perfect, and the chameleon just goes into the bathroom, and he gets her pearls or something that she's left there, and he just sits against the door, and he goes, "She's perfect." She's exactly who the chameleon wanted her to be.
Yeah. You said you had a good relationship with your grandfather. Did you have a good relationship with your grandmother? I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
Did a lot of your grandma come out in Aunt May?
Absolutely. So my grandmother. So my grandfather on my father's side was a funny dude. He was Ben. My grandmother on my mother's side was May, and my grandmother is just she was so sweet. She was such a funny. We took her to the opening premiere of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in London when it came out. So it was really funny because everybody else was there with their girlfriend or wife, and they were all, models and strippers basically. And then there was me, and I was single, and I said, I'm taking my grandmother because I didn't care.
Why not?
So they picked up my grandmother in a limo out of the back end of nowhere where we were from. And all the neighbors are looking out the window like, what is going on? And they brought her to the premiere.
Yeah.
So you have to line up at the premiere and go up the street, and then they pull you out and you go on the red carpet. And my nan was like the queen mother, right? And so I got her out. I'm like, come on, Nan. And I pull her out. The lights and the camera goes off, and she starts waving. So we took her to the thing, and it was great. And at the end, I thought, well, she's going to be tired. And they said, well, the BBC want you to go to the after party.
Oh, wow. Grandma's living it up.
I said, Nan, do you want to go? And she said, yeah, that'd be nice. And so we went.
So cool.
So everyone there was like Elton John, Queen. Freddie Mercury was really sick. Freddie Mercury, I think, was really sick. Brian May was there, the guitarist.
Man,
and they were there.
That's so cool.
They found out I brought my grandmother, and so they all kept coming up to her. And at one point, like one of them, like Brian May came over, and he's like, young man, I heard that you brought your grandmother. And, you know, like Elton John came over and all these people, and they would come over, Freddie Mercury and all that, and then go, and they'd walk away, and she'd go, who was that?
Well, you know, they'll remember Gran, though. Gran may not remember them, but they'll remember Gran.
They remembered, and Brian May told me, he said, listen, next time I'm bringing my mom. You know?
Oh, that's so cool.
It was cool.
Stoggy says Grandma is to blame for your love of comics. I think you told me this. She used to roll them up and mail them to you. Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't have any money. We had no way to get comics. And so she would roll them up once a month. She would send us the reprints of the Spider-Man books, the reprints of the Daredevil books.
Oh, nice. From
the original runs. So I like my memories of it were like the first time he fights Dr. Octopus, because they would reprint those in black and white, right?
Yeah.
And then the British comics that she would send us. So that's where I was first exposed to Stan Lee and his vocabulary and stuff like that, you know?
No doubt. Yep. Stoggy talks about sending the care packages. I have a similar grandparent story in the first Ninja Turtle movie. Yeah. My grandpa and I took my little cousin, Bobby, to it. And my grandpa could care less about Ninja Turtles. And we were at a matinee, and all of a sudden, these kids busted there. It must have been 7 or 8. Just started busting up swords in the aisle. They were Ninja Turtle fighting right in the middle of the movie, along with the fight scene. So my grandpa and I had that fight. He's passed away, but we have that memory of the first Ninja Turtle story. And
that was a cultural moment, man. That was
I know.
Right.
This was all for the Ninja Turtles. Yes, yep. Adam. Matt says, no question. Just want to say I really enjoyed your Spider-Man stories back in the day. I really felt you brought a fresh and unique take on the character. Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
Something we hadn't seen before. So,
well, like I said, you know, Brad, like it doesn't require, I mean, I know that people love Spider-Man, and I love Spider-Man. He's probably one of my favorite characters I ever wrote. And I think I may have explained to you, like, I think if you have a way that you think Spider-Man is, and I explained it to you, I remember saying this because I've said this a lot, right?
Right.
For me, Spider-Man's the guy that I think I had this analogy that I gave to you, and I give it quite a lot. He's the guy that has the flu, and he wakes up and he has to go to work, and he gets there late, and everyone yells at him, and he has a bad day, and he comes home and he has a bad night, and his wife's upset, and his kids are annoyed with him, and then he goes to sleep, and he wakes up and he does it all over again. That's Spider-Man, right? And so I like that character, and as long as you thematically know who it is, you can write him. But I don't need Spider-Man. That's why I love doing the stuff that I'm doing with Fairy Quest and with any other book that I do. If I do more independent stuff, it's because, frankly, I feel like Marvel need me a lot more than I need them, to be honest, or DC do. You know?
Well, one more time, let's plug the Kickstarter, and then I think we should wrap it up. My God, man, we've gone 2 hours. It just flew. All right. Again, Kickstarter. You got 14 days left, it looks like. 33,000 of your $40,000 goal, and then you will start printing the 3rd volume.
Yep. So come support us if you guys are watching this on the stream.
Yeah.
Or if you watch us after the fact. We would love it if you come and make these books a reality, because if you like the way I wrote Spider-Man, you'll just as much like these kind of books.
No doubt. No doubt. And as you said earlier in the show, once they read the first chapter, you've seen this at cons. They read it, they instantly run back, and they say, when's the next one coming out?
Yeah, I think it's the crazy thing, it's the book that happens with. And so what I've often said is I'll do Dragon Con where I live in Atlanta. And I can have I can have the origin of Wolverine, and I might have one person that wants it, but I'll have 150 people. Once they see that, they want it. And so
cool.
That's just a self-evident truth that I kind of know is real. And so we hope that people will come and back us again a little bit. So come back us.
last day to do so, August 8th on Saturday at 9:44. It ends that day. So get your backing before that day so we can make this book a reality. Paul, it is just as much a pleasure several years later to talk to you. You're just a good dude.
Thank you, man. I've always loved I loved doing Spider-Man, and I love the fact that you do this. You've done this for a long time now.
Yeah, 1998 I started.
That's crazy, man. I've known you since you did this, and so I feel like we came through this whole thing together. You know?
Yeah, no doubt. Everybody, thank you for watching. Go check out Paul's book. All right, let me hit end.